Welcome to the last Midnight's Edge in the morning of April 2023. I am Tom Connors. We have the boss man here. How are you doing?
Greetings, everyone. I'm doing good. Excited to be here. Another week is at an end, and we're going to look back at all the highlights on it this week of CinemaCon.
Yeah, it was more like Cinema Bland because there wasn't much of anything to talk about. They didn't really show us or tell us anything we didn't already really know.
I think that would be Cinema Yawn. Thank you very much.
Yeah, more like there, Cinema Yawn. That's much better. Join us. That voice you hear, of course, is the man, the myth, the legend, a man I dressed up for once as Halloween, Mr. Razorfist. That's no joke. It was on FNT. There's
You're nobody until someone's made a Halloween costume out of you. Godspeed. Thank you for having me on. It's been an eventful week. So for me,
Yeah,
not so much for Hollywood, as you guys will soon see.
You have a project, isn't that right?
Yeah, we launched our first graphic novel, not technically my first or my artist's first, but I teamed up with George Alexopoulos, a very good artist, to launch a Western comic that has been on sort of my to-do list for a while. This artist worked with me on my last book, Death Mask, and he's an experienced comic book artist. And so it's got that kind of supernatural. It's an ode to the Clint Eastwood Angel of Death trilogy. It's sort of the Stranger Wanders into Town sort of movie. The High Plains Drifter, Pale Rider. Yeah, that kind of thing. And kind of mixed with sort of old kind of pulp Avenger type things like Doc Savage and the Shadow and the Spider and stuff like that, where you sort of have an Old West vigilante who creates his own sort of organization to combat the minions of evil. Anyways, it's blown up. We more than tripled our goal. We're well on our way to quadrupling it now. And it's looking like we're going to probably unlock the next stretch goal at a minimum. And who knows from there. So I'm blown away at the success of it. It's called The Ghost of the Badlands, and also involves a little bit of Arizona history too. You know, in my neck of the woods, there's a lot of cool Old West Arizona history that people aren't aware of. And so,
how dare you try to teach me?
Right? I'm daring to slip education in there.
Well, that looks awesome, man. I'll have to get it myself yet. So at least there's one more sale you got going.
Right on.
But yeah, check it out, kids. It's up now. I just shared the link in the chat, and I'm sure the mods will be sharing it throughout the show. We have another guest joining us from the Great White North, Mr. Paul Chato, former TV executive.
Yes. Hello, gentlemen. And I use the term loosely.
Indeed.
Of course, as you should.
It's nice to be here. Razorfist, your avatar kind of looks like that guitarist Buckethead.
Oh, or Brett the Hitman Hart. I can't decide which.
No, Buckethead. You know the guitarist, the legendary guitarist.
I know. It's probably because the face looks a little like a mask. I can see.
Yes,
I can see
I
that.
always got the Jim Steinman vibe, especially. But,
yeah,
I do get that as well.
So, and listen, it's a pleasure to be here on your left.
Indeed. Screen right, but his left. Yes.
Yeah, whatever.
Right.
I can never figure that out.
But yes, thank you for being here, Paul. And yes, we're excited to have Razorfist here this morning. We got some stuff to talk about, but let's see what you guys are talking about out there in the chat. We got Liam Lionheart, who's been here for 5 months, and says, "Then Marvel must be too far gone, since they don't care. Why should we watch?" Well, that's interesting statement.
I think that might be in reference to the thumbnail and the title, which has to do with Kang. Now, of course, we have already reported on the rumors that Kang is out, or certainly maybe not Kang the character, but Jonathan Majors is out, and Majors is having some major problem in court right now with the most recent restrictions and everything happening there. We will get into that as things progress over the course of the day here, but it's not looking good for him. I think we can say that.
Right.
And then we have the Walt Man who says, with Vice shutting down their new night show and firing staff, This has put fear in digital media sites' hearts. How many will survive by year's end? Well, I think this is, we had the glut of news organizations, or whatever you want to call them, outlets, over the past few years that were built on, let's say, the fear of the orange man, more so than anything.
See also BuzzFeed, who went under this last, 2 weeks ago or something like that. Yep. BuzzFeed went down like the Hindenburg, or went up like the Hindenburg, is it?
Up in flames and down, like
right, exactly.
The flames went up. That is the nature of
the
hydrogen.
Flames went higher.
It's why the vast majority of people actually survived something that looked so horrific.
Right. If only the crew of the R101 had been so fortunate. But yeah, it looks like a lot of these guys that kind of hitched their wagon to the old shrieking about Trump horse are kind of slowly going the way of the buffalo, or only not so slowly these days. Not really.
Yeah, no, the challenge with building your whole network around one story is that when that story goes away, what are you going to do? How are you going to try to transition from that? And if you don't, then suddenly there's not a marketplace for you anymore.
Pretty much.
And that's what many seem to be finding out the hard way.
The Montaro has been a member for 10 months. Thank you for that. Dr. Longdongler's here. And he sent us a thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. There's over 700 of you here so far. Also, share out the link. Let everybody know that we're live, because Lord knows YouTube doesn't help. OC Giggins says, saw Super Mario Brothers in Japanese. Way better script, sub, and voices. Oh, so it finally released in Japan. I'm curious how that's going to do there. But yeah, we're hearing a lot of the foreign versions just have the localized voices doing it, which, again, takes me back to my original gripe with the film. Is I didn't hate the voices in it, but I didn't see the reason in having Chris Pratt and Anya Taylor-Joy and all those people in it. It's just kind of like, just get the voices from the video games. Kids don't give a shit.
Right? I didn't understand that. To me, the voice should have sounded like the boppity boopity cutaway gag from Family Guy. Like that to me was what the voice should have sounded like. I didn't dig the trying to make it just sound like a kind of generic protagonist a little bit. I don't know. The voice, I admit, never quite worked for me. But in fairness, I haven't seen the Mario film yet.
No, the movie's
just
fine.
The trailer.
That's like one of the only real gripes with it, basically, is like, did you need it? No. Did it ruin it? No. The worst part was Seth Rogen. Like,
well, and it's pretty clear. We'll probably talk about this more a little later, but it's pretty obvious that superhero films have entered their Fat Elvis phase. So we're now kind of groping for something to put in its place, right? I mean, Hollywood gropes for entirely different reasons. Ask Weinstein, but it looks like they're looking for something to sort of replace it. They're sort of scrambling for a lot of different things, as we'll talk about. I mean, we just talked about my graphic novel. There's going to be a big wave of Westerns, so that is one thing they could possibly replace it with. But it looks like in the immediate future, they're looking for video game movies to fill that void. After Sonic and now Mario, they could be forgiven for thinking that's going to be their salvation.
Well, maybe they'll get smart and make Red Dead Redemption. They'll hit both.
I mean, the game kind of is a movie anyway. It's sort of, but
especially the newer one, right, or whatever you want to call it. Because I know there's like 5 games where they call it Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, actually, I think they would really screw up if they were to make a Red Dead Redemption movie.
Yeah,
because you're going to get a far deeper experience just playing the game for yourself. That's the beauty with like the likes of Sonic and Mario. That works because the story is basically, or the gameplay really is go from the beginning to the end of the level and use the same game mechanics. And the story is really simplistic to support those game mechanics. You can easily develop a story that fits a movie from those game mechanics and the story that you have right there. Whereas Red Dead Redemption, that's going to have the exact same problem as Uncharted and every other similar video game movie adaptation. It comes from a period when the video games were more complex and have deeper stories than the movies.
Oh, you didn't like Assassin's Creed, the film? No? Didn't
no,
didn't care for that one.
Yeah.
Didn't watch it.
Right.
Completely
I mean, there's
like nice visuals, but that's about it.
yeah. It looks like it looked. This is the funny thing. Action movies and big tentpole Hollywood blockbusters already look like video game cutscenes to begin with nowadays. Like I just saw the trailer that they're running for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and it literally just looked like a bunch of people sitting in front of a green screen with shiny stuff flying in the foreground a little bit. And it was just like, what is the point of this? Is a video game cutscene. So it's like you adapt a video game to that, and it's like, what are we doing here? I mean, you already made your money releasing the game. In fact, you made an order of magnitude more money. You just mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2. That game, the last time I checked, and that was months ago, sold 50 million copies. I don't know, it's $60 to $70 a pop, what that sorts out to, but that's a lot of pesos. That's a lot of dollars.
Successful,
make a lot more.
Successful AAA titles have historically always outstripped the revenue of movies.
Well, it's been that way for a little while now. Like Hollywood's kind of taken notice, but they've been just flying high on the superhero that they just really haven't needed the video games yet. And this is where I was surprised where Sony didn't take advantage of it years ago, especially during the era of the PS3, where they could have synergized it with, having Blu-ray in the system and all that kind of stuff. But no, I said the same thing kind of the last week or the week before, whatever it was we were talking about, is like, yeah, the older simple games, you can interpret more of a story into it, and it's a little easier to extrapolate a movie that people can accept, I think. And I think you guys are right, because you get to some of these newer games. That was my problem with Red Dead Redemption. Sure, the playing it is part of the fun, but I was actually just jumping through the game parts just so I could get to the story, right? Like, that was my main thing. It was like, get through this just so I can get to the next story beat, because I wanted to see what happened and get to the end of the game, So, like, I was just sucked into the story at that point.
The Uncharted series, the 4 games are fantastic and way better than the silly movie. When a video game is deeper than a movie, you're in trouble.
Yeah, that is the problem. Is it's an interactive medium. So if you execute the story and the game correctly, it turns the movie adaptation into a bit of a two-dimensional appendage.
Yep.
Right? Like,
Yep.
I feel like Frank Miller, there's a quote from Frank Miller where he was talking about how, because Frank Miller's known as the guy who turned comics into a cinematic format, right? And his quote was, and this is years ago, I got into comics to make comics more like movies. Then I realized that both mediums have their different strengths and weaknesses. So I stay in comics to make comics less like movies. Right? Like,
we blame him.
Right.
But I mean, just talking about Uncharted, the movie, what was ironic, especially from someone like myself, who's a huge Uncharted fan, was that the game was more believable than the movie. That you would never have had ancient galleons hoisted by helicopter battling out with each other. You'd never have that in the video game because the people who did the video game are not idiots.
Yeah.
So,
you could tell it's made by someone who
with an idea. I got an idea.
Exactly. And they're wedging that. They're like, oh, it's a video game movie, so I can just get away with doing anything.
And we got to up the ante, because what do we replace interactivity with in a static film 2D experience? Well, we just make it stupid.
Exactly. I like sometimes when they take the game and they include the familiar hallmarks, but then they do their own thing with it. A good example of this that I'm a big defender of, I like this movie, I think it's one of the better video game adaptations, is Silent Hill, the first one.
Okay, never saw it.
It's directed by the same guy as the Brotherhood of the Wolf. Incredible.
That's a horror. That's a horror game.
Guns. Yeah, you have an ally right here, because I have long maintained that Silent Hill, the first one, not only is it one of the best video game movies ever made, it's one of the best horror movies ever made. That movie is a masterpiece. It's a visual, tonal, scoral, however you want to put it, masterpiece. It's so underrated.
It is. It really is. Great atmosphere. It's like the Blade Runner of horror, kind of, in terms of the visual look of and the construction of the world, in a weird way. But and Christoph Gans, the creator of it, was a huge fan of the games. Like, he was obsessed with it. Apparently, he's coming back and making another one. By the way,
Yes, it's done filming, or it's shooting right now. He's making like a movie that completely ignores the Silent Hill sequel that already was. So he's making
Good
like a
call.
new Silent Hill 2.
Yeah, that's a good call. That second one sucked. You knew. Anyone appreciate the fact that during that whole era when they were trying to shill the 3D televisions, what was that, like 2010 to 2014-ish? Something
Yeah,
like that.
thereabouts. Avatar came in 2009, then they started rushing 3D post-conversions and TVs and everything from 2010 onwards. 2011, actually. Yeah, 2011. It took some time before the first generations of TVs came. So 2011 was like when the 3D TVs really started entering the market.
Yeah, but the beneficial byproduct is sort of as an outgrowth of this. You just look at a whole wave of movies and tell that they're utter detritus just by the fact that they have 3D at the end. Just that appellation right at the end. It immediately marks it. Oh, I don't have to bother with that. Fantastic.
No.
Well, that actually
3D converted.
Right.
Honestly, as we got going, the converted ones were better than the actual shot ones. You're not wrong. And that's just because they had more control. But no, it also corresponded with the McDonaldization of movies. That's the thing. So like everything was just like the last one. So it didn't matter if it was 3D or not. I ain't saving shit.
Well,
they were all junk. That was part of the problem.
That you know, we're all jumping for joy over the Hobbit trilogy. That first movie that had the vomitorium, vomitorium actually means something that it doesn't sound like. It's not onomatopoeia. The stupid mine ride towards the beginning where you're just like whipping through, and the impossible physics of all those little carts whipping along those tracks in the dungeons of the orc was the dumbest stuff, and it just completely ruined the movie. But that was 3D service.
Right. No, absolutely. Terrible. Oh, and there was the worst part about those movies, and I actually do enjoy The Hobbit for what it is.
No. I enjoyed the movies, but they could cut them down to 2 movies.
Oh, absolutely, and that's clearly
actually
the
just
intended
one
format.
No, 2. Absolutely, there's enough for 2.
You could maybe, if you extended it out a little bit, but I remember the one that gets to me. I think it was in the third one, maybe the second one. That's another problem. They all blend together. It's the one where it's like a barrel ride. They're down a river, and it's just like watching. It really is like a Mr. Magoo cartoon or something. They're like narrowly.
It's like watching a video game without the controller.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that one is rough. The padding in those movies.
It's terrible.
You could tell executives were just over his shoulder, like, okay, now we need an orc fight. Now we need another orc fight. Like,
well, that and just to spread it out over 3 movies, right? And he wasn't even doing his vision. He had to pick up what Guillermo was doing initially because they had no time to change anything. I mean,
the purest distillation of the difference between the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogy is everyone buys the extended edition of the Lord of the Rings because you have to get that extra stuff. It feels more like
I'm there. There he is.
Right, exactly. You get extra scenes that are great, that work, that shouldn't have been on the cutting room floor. But with The Hobbit, you like almost wish you could just have a 1 or 2 movie cut. you wish you could have the director's cut like 3/4 of the runtime off edition.
Yeah, you want the Phantom edit.
Exactly.
Or the book edition, basically, where they cut it down to nothing that isn't in the book.
Well, the problem with, not that we want to talk about The Hobbit. The Hobbit is not a very good adventure book. Lord of the Rings is. Not a lot happens in The Hobbit.
No, and honestly,
there was a big challenge in that movie. But the only reason I brought this up is that movie fell into that period of time where executives were demanding 3D in the theater. Now 3D is dead for the most part in the theater.
Yeah,
thank God.
Pretty much.
So that's the only reason I brought it
well,
up.
and
That's a perfect example of a movie series that was almost completely ruined by.
No, I was a fan of 3D though, and I think that you guys hit the nail on the head as far as what killed it, and that was just this incessant need to make everything 3D, like that. Because
also, like, you think maybe VR, you think maybe VR coming on so strong for a little while there, anyways, may have had a part to play in that, because it's essentially got the same 3D technology in it, only you can actually be in it.
It has kind of taken over. Like 3D has died in television and in theaters, but I guess through the Oculus Rift and stuff like that, there's still people getting 3D films, and obviously some projectors and stuff still do it. So it's still around, but it's just, I think that's kind of where it's going to end up in the end of the day.
I think
the VR world. I think you're right.
Nothing will happen with VR until it makes people look less stupid using it.
No kidding. Exactly. The moment you don't have to have a toaster oven strapped to your ocular cortex. Like, no.
It's getting a little better, but no, you're right, Razorfist. Like, that's kind of the place I think it will end up going to, is because that's the only fun gimmick with it anymore, is to use it in VR. But I mean, it's still just like watching a screen. It's not like you're immersed in the movie, unless they find some way to do that. I mean,
you just tape 2 iPhones to your eyeballs, and you
exactly.
Well, it's already the same technology. That's what he's saying.
What's funny is when we had our video game Jewels of the Oracle, and we were at GamersCon in '95, I believe, they had a military 3D demo install that was really, really cool, because it was being used to train. They would set up some kind of village in the Middle East, and then you would go in and run through the streets. It was a real training system, but the frame rate was so low. I tried. You were on a treadmill, and you had that giant headgear, and I almost threw up in the headgear. The frame rate was so low, but it was quite neat. Now, I mean, any Call of Duty is 1,000 times more sophisticated than what we played with. But in 1995, and all those Silicon Graphic, mini mainframes chunking away, creating this world, that was pretty insane. But it was also cool that it was real military use. That's what made it neat.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the chat. Let's see what's going on there. Joker Voice has been a member for 20 months. Thank you so much for being here.
Congratulations, Joker Voice.
Yes.
You made the right choice.
Stian Modstad has been here for 9 months. Thank you so much. Mihan has been a member for 6 months. Thank you so much. Big Daddy MRI sends us a super sticker. It is a red box of popcorn. Thank you so much. He's ready for the conversation today. What's your first thought? Sends in 11 Canadian and says, Sisu premieres this weekend. I'm super excited to go see this fun action film. How about you guys? Well, I'll probably wait till it hits streaming, but Andre, I got to imagine this is a bit bigger deal over in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's actually out in my neck of the woods. I just haven't had time to go see it yet. I can go see it anytime, actually. So
can someone explain it to me? The only big action thing I've heard is, of course, John Wick, the new John Wick, which people are still talking about.
Oh, this is kind of like that. It's from one of the directors of John Wick, but it's basically a Finnish John Wick killing a bunch of Nazis.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. It's about like this lone Finnish dude who comes across some gold, and the Yazis, they really want this gold, so it takes place during World War II and everything. And it's a pretty badass John Wick style movie. Loads of action, loads of gore, everything like that. Wow. So it should be pretty awesome. If you look at the trailer, it does seem like an awesome movie.
Yeah,
so you have,
I thought it looked like the Norwegian version of Inglourious Basterds.
Well, you're not wrong.
A little bit of that,
because the lead Yahtzee bad guy is actually played by a Norwegian.
Same guy. Isn't one of the guys from Inglourious Basterds in it? Or am I thinking of a different one?
No, there's no one from
a different movie I'm thinking of.
Here.
Never mind.
But the Norwegian here, you will have seen, like, for instance, in The Martian. There he's playing another German, the German astronaut. That's him here. So, so he has this Norwegian has a knack for being typecast as German in international movies.
Right. So I think it would be right up your alley. Horseradish Power says Razorfist sounds like a superhero to me. Well, he kind of is.
Yeah, isn't it in what was it, Shang-Chi? Shang-Chi. There's a villain called Razorfist. I
Was
didn't know
there?
about this, by the way, when I chose my nomenclature.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I did not know about this. He's a super obscure Marvel. You know, one of those like late 60s, early 70s, like Daredevil type villains that nobody knows about. You know what I mean? Like those guys. But yeah.
I didn't even know about that. I didn't watch
Yeah.
Shang-Chi, though. I didn't waste my time.
I did. I watched it.
Well, I'm sorry.
It was mandatory because there was a
So you're the
Canadian in
one.
it. Yeah, because there was a Canadian in it, it's mandatory viewing. Up here, we have laws. That Anne of Green Gables, they actually check on you. And
no wonder you hate Jim Carrey so much.
Yeah.
Well, we have to. No, since he became an American citizen and is no longer required to watch Jim Carrey movies, which is thankful.
Oh, semantics.
Yeah, but we do, you know, when we get our passport, we have to go through the checklist. Have you seen Anne of Green Gables? Yes. Which was your favorite episode?
How many seasons of Red Green do you own on DVD?
All of them, yes.
Otherwise, they appear at your house and aggressively apologize to you.
Yes, that's great. No, the Red Green is not included because it was not government funded. So nothing that isn't government funded, they do not like.
Right.
So.
Well, weren't you saying that there's something going on with that right now?
Yeah, C11. If you want to talk about that, a bill was passed.
Why don't you tell everybody what that's all about real quick?
So C11 is a Canadian bill by the Liberals to extract cash out of the streamers who basically come into the country and funnel money straight out of it's like Nestle's coming into Canada and taking all our fresh water and turning it into bottled, water. So there's a little bit of that. I think there is some truth to that. I mean, apart from the fact that a crap ton of Netflix, Amazon, and Apple productions are happening in Canada. I mean, I don't know what our entertainment infrastructure industry would be like without the streamers actually making some pretty fine stuff here, like The Boys and well, I mean, I hate to say it, but Discovery and Strange New Worlds, they are all occupying.
A few years ago, didn't AMC do that with, speaking of Westerns, Hell on Wheels, a very good show that I like.
That I don't know. I think, what is it? Speaking of video game movies, The Last of Us was shot in Alberta.
Oh, yeah. They do a lot of in Alberta, the Calgary kind of area. Yeah.
So we have a great crew. So, but apart from that, I think there is something to be said that when the streamers go into any country, and all they're doing is mining money and leaving with it and not leaving anything behind. I mean, there's a certain argument to be made for it. Now, the other side, the streamers, of course, have been fighting this. One of the arguments that they made was that, like those of us who are making content on YouTube, we're going to be censored. The government specifically has said, no, that is not the case. So we shall see. Although, we do have the pronoun inclusion in our rights legislation that did not specifically say that we must use pronouns, but it's kind of become kind of sort of mandatory. What is it that Peterson called it? Compelled speech. Although, you know what, to tell you the truth, I think pronouns are going to go the way of the large shoulder pads, and that's going to happen not too soon for me. But getting back to C11, and that's it. So it's passed. All the people who are involved in the entertainment industry in Canada are quite pleased about it. Now, one of the angles that people have talked about is that the big streamers up here, the Bells and the Rogers, they're the ones who bring in American programming, and they want to have a bigger piece of the stuff that they bring in, and also the small amount of Canadian programming that they do make. They want to be protected, and in a weird way, I believe C11 protects our $1 billion phone and cable industries up here. So, we do a lot of that. It's very important for Canadians to protect We're our own billionaires through left-wing policy.
They have, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like an equal play law in Canada, right? Where the television stations and radio networks and stuff actually have to, for every X number of hours of international or American programming, they have to have Canadian.
No, that's not quite like that. I mean, I don't know whether we have the laws on radio anymore, but at some point there was a certain percentage, 20%, 25% had to be Canadian. But on the TV side, what we have is concurrent streaming. So if the network, if the cable company up here is showing, let's say, Frasier, they show it at the same time as they do in the United States, but they strip out the American commercials and substitute Canadian commercials.
I see. So that handily gets around the problem.
Yeah. Now, that's always been a problem with Super Bowl because we really didn't want to see our crappy Canadian commercials. And we wanted to see the crappy American commercials.
Exactly. hate to miss out on that Gillette, the best a ma'am can get.
more
Advertisement for a few years ago.
Dylan Mulvaney riding that Clydesdale. That's what I want to see.
Shave my legs and all that.
Anyway, so that's been a bone of contention. So now we'll see. TikTok is complaining about it. In the usual way. But I don't know what TikTok is going to do because part of the issue is that they're now going to. The law says that you're going to have to contribute a certain amount of cash, like TikTok, Netflix, YouTube, to a pool of money. But we've done this in the past before, and now we're just going to have our usual gatekeepers, and they're going to insist on DEI checkbox content and create content that absolutely nobody wants to watch, which is a Canadian tradition. We use government funds to create shows that nobody wants to see. It is our right. And on TikTok, what are they going to do? They're going to change the songs around so people can only dance to Leonard Cohen, Nickelback, Bryan Adams. I mean, that I believe is what it's going to be enshrined in law.
Right. I think that may be against the Geneva Convention. I don't know.
I think so. Well, Nickelback, I believe that's torture.
Right.
So and maybe even Bryan Adams. So anyways, that's kind of the summary. If you guys have any questions. So yeah, the streamers are going to have to add money to some pot that will then allow Canadian entertainers or organizations to make shows. And now most of that pot of money is going to go to Bell and Rogers. So they don't have to put out their own money to make Canadian shows. Now, not all of them are bad. I mean, Transplant was a good show. So, I mean, no, there's stuff that does go around the world.
You know what that sounds a little bit like to me? Like this pay up.
Yep. It's extortion.
Like extortion racket. That's exactly what I was going to say. It sounds like a mafioso style extortion racket. Like, oh, you want to make something in this town? You want to enter our market? Well, you got to pay for our services then. Like a nice business you have there. Would be a shame if something happened to it.
But don't they do that in Norway?
Well, I'm sure we have similar things. I mean, like the Norwegian and the Canadian film industry, they have some very disturbing similarities there, which is why none of them are really thriving. But I'm not familiar with that kind of extortion. You do have to, if you want to come and film here, then you have to fill in a bunch of glorious forms. You have to just like in Canada, you have to and there's no help if you have Jews to fill them out. There's no guilt points for that. So it just has to be filled out magnificently, and then you have to pay tax and everything like that. So I guess that's kind of an extortion, but there's no pot, at least not that I'm aware, that you give us this and we'll spend that on further woke productions. We don't have that, as far as I know.
We have a conference that's coming up that's going to teach writers how to include climate change in all their scripts. Yes, we are. Canada is just a shithole.
What did I tell you was coming next? What did I tell you was coming next?
I mean, that's, as a comedian, whenever I sit down to write something funny, I go, what DEI checkboxes can I put? Well, I'll do it if I can make fun of it.
Right.
Then I'll have, a ton of it. I wrote a play a long time ago about a sad sack Canadian company that lived off of government grants. And then a right-wing Canadian government came in and cut all the grants. So, and no one would see their shows. There'd always be two people in the audience, and they would just do the most horrible Canadian, I made up all these horrible Canadian plays. Not that we don't have good Canadian plays, but, everything was about beer. So the leader of this troupe figures that, well, the only thing that we're really good at is filling out forms. So they find out about the Goethe Institute that will, if you do a German production on your local soil, they will actually pay for the production, which is true. I found that to be true. So there's a phone call with the Germans. You go, thank you for your filling out the form. No one has filled out our forms better than you Canadians. And so I'm crying. Hans and I were crying, looking at the form. It was beautiful. It was so totally beautiful. Who filled out this form? And we go, it's one of the Jewish guys in the troupe. Oh, for our Jewish guild, we're going to add some more cash.
That's exactly what you would not get in Norway. But other than that, the response would be very similar. Like if the form is beautifully filled in, it's a very complicated form. I have seen it. I have held the form in my hands, and I almost had a heart attack looking at it. Certainly, my blood pressure increased. so yeah, these people, they're also sticklers for their forms. But again, there's no plus points for being Jewish. But if you have big enough budget and you will leave enough tax money, that's certainly gonna help.
Well,
see, that's the beauty
say
of
that
the
it's not
US.
going to affect the streamers, so we shall, we shall see. And I don't know what kind of content is going to.
That's the beauty of the US. Our government funded shit is all delegated to PBS and the news.
And NPR and
that's what I mean.
Didn't Canada attempt this same gambit with the video game industry? Actually, several years ago, Quebec had first a bunch of tax breaks for video game companies coming in, and so you had all these Square Enix Montreal, Eidos Montreal. You had all of that, and then they started. Okay, you're here. Now it's time to pay up, Paulie, right? Like
I didn't hear that, but I have visited the studios in that one area up where St. Viator's bagel place is, and it's it's quite a big industry in Montreal.
It is, but I've noticed it slowed down recently. I thought I had heard that it had.
Well, one thing that killed it was the horrible Mass Effect 4.
Oh yes.
That wasn't helpful, although it wasn't really the fault of the Montreal team. That was Anna Sarkeesian BS.
Oh yes, yeah. I believe she consulted on that.
Yes, thank God she consulted. So none of the women in the video were even vaguely good looking. That was a great advancement in.
Right. Yeah. Normally when video games came out with chicks in them, you see the mods that have them naked or whatever. These games, I just pretend they don't exist from the neck down. Actually, I just that's the way I'd prefer it to be. It's fine.
Yeah.
Or the neck up,
no
frankly.
mods allowed. Pardon me. What?
Or the neck up, frankly.
Yeah. Wow. And they even changed updated versions of Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, where I can't remember the name of the one character who was the Russian model, who was the sleek black and white leather outfit. Is that there was a couple of shots that were actually angled from the bum up, and those shots are gone now.
I heard about that. Yes, the Mass Effect 2 Legendary Edition.
That's right.
It was funny because the character Miranda.
Thank you. Yes.
Was intended to be a femme fatale, like in a film noir kind of con. That's why she has the shoulder pads and the whole. She's got kind of the Veronica Lake sort of kind of visual reference points to the iconography of 40s Hollywood. And The whole idea is that she's supposed to be essentially using her feminine wiles, weaponizing them. And oh no, sorry, it's current year. Doesn't matter that it's germane to the plot. Doesn't matter that it shines a light on her character. We have to omit that a female is in danger of being attractive.
Well, and they had some badass female characters. Jack was just a fantastic character.
Yeah.
I mean, she was totally OP. But no, that's not good enough.
No.
That's not that. Anyway, we won't talk about that. So there it is. C11, Canada struggling to keep any semblance of its own entertainment humanity as we are on the border of the elephant that is the United States that just consumes us. Yeah, it's part of Canada's insecurity personality.
Yeah, decide, well, since Hollywood is woke, let's go even woker.
Oh, we've been woke for an awful long time. I mean, our funding agency, Telefilm, will not fund a Canadian and English language comedy. They'd scared to death.
Yeah, that's deeply problematic, isn't it?
Deeply problematic, yes. No, so it's all BS. I mean, I don't see the point. Anyway, so there you go. But it's still a nice country. Lots of places to drive around.
Nice landscape.
Nice landscape. Good
big
parks.
Big moose statues.
Yes, lots of moose statues.
It's not as good as the ones in Norway. But yeah.
Very, very good apple fritters along Highway 17. Just so you know. Anyway, yep, it's still a nice place. Water's clean. Enjoy it. I've paid off my house. I'm not leaving.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But
all right, well, let's get back into the
few more super chats before we get into some of the main
stories
of the day.
Yeah, Arden Blade has been a member for 9 months. It says, "Hail Razorfist, the Iron Age comes."
Godspeed. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of new kind of independent projects popping up. Some of alarming professionalism. So,
well, we can't have that.
Right.
Shadow Dancer the Red Mage has been a member for 7 months. It says, "Chato, would you consider using motion capture technology to convey the facial nuances of a Mr. Canoehead live action?"
Well, you can't see his face, so yeah.
No,
sure.
We'd spend $1.5 million just to figure out how to do that.
That's correct.
That's what Hollywood would do first, just to realize we can't.
Yeah. Well,
it'll all be replaced by AI in a few years anyway. Yeah. Don't worry about it, folks.
What's great with Mr. Canoehead is you just can't really see him at all, so he can be race swapped without any difficulty.
That's true. Chad Rupnerine says, "Mr. Fist." Well, he's calling you Mr. Fist. Yeah, love your video on Westerns.
That's sounding very leather bar-ish.
Right?
I'd avoid that.
I was going to say, maybe you can just call him Razor.
Sounds like somebody working the tap at like a gay bar called the Pump House or something.
I lived right next to one called the Barn.
Anyway, he goes, any thoughts on Westerns set in modern day like No Country for Old Men?
I see. I thought... Yeah, I mean, No Country for Old Men. Wasn't that also kind of called a modern noir kind of? Although, is there anything that film critics don't attach the noir sort of suffix to? They love that buzzword even when it doesn't apply. I saw Mr. Robot referred to as a modern noir. I was like, what? But yeah,
I couldn't watch
I don't know.
Mr. Robot.
Modern. I mean, obviously, the best modern example of a Western. Although it's probably not the best, is Yellowstone is huge right now.
Yeah,
and before that, Justified, of course, which is supposed to be really good. I haven't seen it.
What'd you think of Outlaw Josie Wales?
I love the Outlaw Josie Wales.
Okay,
absolutely love it. Clint Eastwood has said that he likes that movie better than Unforgiven, and he thinks Unforgiven was so beloved because it kind of came out at the right time in the early 90s when it was like, okay, we can kind of take Westerns seriously again. For some reason, there was that moment in the early 90s. He has said that if he released Josie Wales in the 90s, it would have been bigger than Unforgiven. That's his opinion.
Well, it's very much the Japanese archetype movie.
Right.
I mean, it's a kung fu movie, really.
I mean, they're all sort of, you get this byplay between the samurai film and the Western that's gone back and forth over and over and over again. Akira Kurosawa ripped off Westerns, and then Westerns ripped them off back. And
Sergio Leone.
Ping-ponging. Yeah, it just keeps ping-ponging back and forth.
It'll be interesting to see how new Westerns might work.
Well, did you see the Pedro Pascal project that was
I heard about it. Haven't seen it.
Bareback Mountain, apparently.
Yeah,
we're going for that.
Bareback Mando. Is what I like.
Good times. It's a short film, though. That I don't think that's being made as a commercial endeavor. It's some kind of short film that is artsy and fartsy simultaneously. So I think that's all that's intended to be, is a big virtue signal.
There you go. Good question, though. And yeah, I gotta agree with Yellowstone right now. That might be another reason why Westerns are kind of making a
comeback. And there was that movie with Gina, which I never saw, but it didn't seem that interesting to me.
Terror on the Prairie. I still haven't seen it. And there was the one that Isaiah Washington made recently about, there was a biopic about Bass Reeves, the famous bounty hunter and lawman in Indian Territory who worked for the hanging judge. That was called Corsicana, which unfortunately had a really, really limited theatrical release on account of that guy as persona non grata all over Hollywood, right? Like, he had to sell blood to get this thing into any movie theaters. But it's supposed to be pretty good.
The Old Way was pretty good, the Nicolas Cage Western. It was pretty much stuff, it's all just cliches, but it was all right.
And there's a relatively recent one that's supposed to be good called Old Tom. That's a little more on the recent side, and I've heard a lot of good things about that.
I did enjoy News of the World. Did you guys see that one at all? It came out like 2 years ago with Tom Hanks.
No. It's interesting. Westerns never completely go away. You know, you get
they always around.
There was a really good Austrian Western that I recommended in my recent video about the 10 Westerns that I recommended, called The Dark Valley. It was like a complete reimagining of the Western, just set in the Alps. It was fascinating and really well shot and very archetypal, right? Super just the stranger rides into town sort of idea. And yet it's in this European setting and kind of reframes the whole thing. Really cool movie.
No, but if you haven't seen News of the World, you might like it. It's I know not a lot of people are fans of Tom Hanks, but he plays this guy who goes from town to town to read the news, because a lot of people in town can't read. And he ends up rescuing a girl who was kidnapped when she was a baby by Indians or Native Americans. I'm sorry, Native Americans. So it's like about his dealing, because they don't have anybody to take her, so he has to take her along with him on his trip to take her to this town. So it's an interesting story. It's pretty good. But that's one of the more modern ones I've seen. Other than old.
Did that make it into the theaters, or was that streaming?
News of the World? Yeah, I went into the theaters. It just didn't. It did okay, but it didn't
I wouldn't mind if somebody could make a good Trigun. Okay, yeah. Silence.
The anime adaptation?
Yeah.
Or manga adaptation?
Yeah. Vash the Stampede.
Yeah, they still make Western-ish stuff in Japan a little bit, and don't even get me started on France. They're huge on Westerns.
Really?
In Europe. Yeah, Europe is gaga for Westerns still to this day. So it's kind of weird. A lot of the Westerns that still get made and have a halfway decent budget are primarily made for the European market.
This is true.
Mostly Germany and France and Belgium and Spain, and Italy too.
I can also say that certainly in Northern Europe, even though we don't make that many Western movies, Western-based comics and Western-based pulp books, they are hot sellers here. They really, really are.
Yeah, but I mean, who's a bigger European comic artist than Mobius? And he made his bones. He made his bones doing Blueberry which had a terrible film adaptation, but or at least it's a terrible adaptation. It's not a bad film, but it's a terrible adaptation.
Exactly, that's what I meant. Like, if you have read the Blueberry comics, then it's absolutely terrible. If you just want a spaced out Western, it's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah, that's a pretty good movie.
A good friend of mine, Drew Hayden Taylor, is a First Nations playwright and humorist, and he's very, very funny, very talented. Has made a couple of documentaries about German fascination with First Nation culture, and they because they're Germans, they go for it. So yeah, it's kind of weird, all these white guys, but then they research the Sioux in this particular part of the United States, and they've got every feather down, every beaded belt, everything right historically correct. And they're just insane. They got teepees everywhere. So he went there in looking at it ironically. It's fascinating, insulting, both at the same time, but it's just schizophrenic.
Well,
they love it.
On the note of Westerns, Glade Ribbon says, we need Westerns put back into space. Space Western. It's a problem with Star Wars sci-fi. Yeah, see good episodes of Mando versus bad episodes of Mando. I agree. I checked out the one and I'm like, why in this third season? Because, they clearly got rid of Cara Dune. Well, you have it set up perfectly where Mando could just be the sheriff of the town. Why not just do that?
You could do a lot of things. I watched just recently rewatched the first couple episodes of The Mandalorian, and it was you could clearly see all the callbacks to particularly spaghetti westerns.
Oh yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, definitely. And it was like it had. I honestly think that also might have had a hand in a little bit of the Western resurgence, because that was even a little bit ahead of Yellowstone.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that was just slightly ahead
the same
of the
time. Well, because Yellowstone's on season 5 already, so.
Yeah. So they were more or less around the same time. You also had Longmire just before that too, and little things.
Well, Yellowstone is a soap opera.
Too.
It's Dynasty or Dallas with
kind of
more along the lines of Dallas is what I've compared it to.
Yeah. 1883 though is almost as big of a hit, and that's a pure Western. You know what I mean? Like,
well, like I said, that's basically the Oregon Trail, the show.
Absolutely.
The game as a kid in school, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
You have died of dysentery.
Well, the United States has romanticized Westerns extensively.
Yeah. And now I feel like it went the other way. Like in the early aughts, Deadwood, the success of Deadwood spawned a huge wave of Westerns, and most were revisionist in nature. Which is odd because Deadwood isn't that revisionist, but really. A lot of the stuff that came tumbling after was. So yeah, we kind of are out of that phase now, and it seems like people are ready for some kind of unironic appreciation of it, which is why that Pedro Pascal thing comes off as so tone deaf.
Well, and you know what I think, Razorfist, I think a big part of it is because the Midwest is usually ignored when it comes to entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And we are heavy consumers here in the Midwest of Western entertainment. Like, we love Westerns, Clint and John Wayne movie comes on TV, shit used to stop around here, like that's the kind of place it used to be. So like I'm sure it's that way all throughout the Midwest, so yeah, that's why I know Yellowstone is such a big hit, is because much like it's tapping into that same crowd that Dallas did. Like, Paul is saying, it has something for everybody in it. And maybe except for maybe the little kids, but like, you know what I mean? But like, even Deadwood, like you're right. Like at that time when that came out, that was probably peak Western, if you ask me. Cause I was like, at that point, I'm like, I don't know if they can make Western better than this.
Right. It is the best. And probably the best HBO show, honestly.
I mean, I was so sad that the movie wasn't like a mini series. Cause I'm like, they really need to make this breathe so we can finish this up properly. But,
David Milch and his diagnosis with Alzheimer's put the kibosh on that.
I know, it's just sad we didn't get like a 3-movie miniseries or something just to kind of
You know all the drama around why Deadwood was canceled and all the HBO, the guy punching a hooker in Las Vegas and all the craziness that happened. That is a crazy story.
And just on top of it all, even though it was a hit, it was costing a fortune. That was another problem.
That too. Of course, then they greenlight what? Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Oh, that frugal little affair. Gotcha.
It makes about as much sense as getting rid of Brian Fuller because Star Trek Discovery is costing too much, and then you bring on Kurtzman and you triple the budget.
Exactly.
That's Hollywood for you.
Brian Fuller left for other reasons.
Well, he said that part of it, the reason is him and Moonves butted heads on the budget. That was the big point of contention. Is Moonves was like, why can't you do this for cheap? You guys used to be able to make these shows for nothing.
Then why they make Discovery? Then
your guess is as good as mine, Paul. This is what we're trying to figure out because Brian said to him, look, yeah, they were cheaper down the road, but you have to spend the money up front to amortize these shows. Moonves didn't like that. And they used the excuse that he was busy with the American Gods to get rid of him. And then all of a sudden along comes Kurtzman. And again, this is the one piece we're trying to figure out here because we could never figure out what happened there because as soon as Kurtzman comes in, the budget goes up astronomically.
Yeah.
Like they're spending $8 to $10 million an episode all of a sudden.
And
Netflix is paying for it all. That's the thing.
Yep. And strangely enough, it's actually germane to the Western thing because Star Trek is supposed to be wagon train to the stars, which I think also is a big reason why they've lost the plot on making the show because nobody who makes that show realizes that anymore at all. I honestly don't think they're even attempting to make it the space Western that it was from the beginning.
No, not anymore.
Oh,
it's so far from that.
Do you want to count the number of things they've lost the plot on?
Right. I'm not sure I have a list that
long.
We
don't have enough time today, Paul.
I don't think we can. My favorite topic, and these guys know about it, is the gear porn. There's none of it in it. That's part of the fun of Star Trek. Gear porn.
Not anymore.
No,
because that's for the geeks, Paul, and that's not who they're trying to appeal to anymore.
Right, and part of
appealing to the TikTok.
Part of the cultural revolution is that history is bad. Everything that's old is not good. It's you're done. You're not only are you done with old people who remember it, you're also done with the past. The past is bad. So we're part of that also.
And then see also on the Western Front, not to be punny, Brandon the anime guy says long live Westerns. Summertime is for Westerns. I get my Western kicks every once in a while. Like half the reason I'm so far behind on stuff for Midnight's Edge is because of Red Dead Redemption 2. I admitted that to Andre. I'm like
that, and when that game came out around the same time, another Western game came out, which both consumed my time, which is Hunt Showdown, which is like a bayou zombie apocalypse Western.
I don't know that one, but like, when Red Dead 2 came out, I got so sucked into it. For like 2 weeks, I didn't get nothing done. So I've been years behind ever since.
That's me. Hold on.
Oh, I figured as much. Because you're the only one around here who has a landline.
His 1980s phone is going off.
hey,
Mr. Belvedere.
Let's see. I don't see any more on the Western talk. So let's go back to the top here. We've got Dark King who says next crossover, The Woman King versus Godzilla. Oh no, they say she's got to go.
That's the only way I think he can salvage his position in Hollywood. I think he's got to announce he's transitioning.
Godzilla's doing just fine.
All right.
I mean,
I'm talking about Kang.
Yeah, well, Kang's fucked. Let's talk about Kang for a minute here. Because that was one of the jokes that I think brilliantly was penned by Script Doctor. He said all they need to do now is get Viola Davis to come in and replace Kang as the woman Kang.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
That was a great joke he wrote. So yeah, let's talk about Kang for a minute because he's in the news again. Isn't that right, Andre? And Andre must have stepped away.
No, Andre is right here. I just started talking without unmuting, as I'm told to do sometimes. Yes, he is indeed back in the news again. And again, it's for the worst reason possible. Now, I have a story. At least I thought I had a story here that I could just send you.
I'm looking for it myself.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I'm sending it to you in the private chat so you can bring it up on stream, or on screen rather. So we have already reported, because Tom, you had heard the rumor that he is at this point already out from the role of Kang, that Marvel have moved on. That, of course, is not yet confirmed, but at this point they really should, because the next round of news here is that he has agreed to a temporary protection order for his alleged victim. Now, just notice how the goalposts and the story and everything here has changed. Initially, it was just a misunderstanding, and this alleged victim, his girlfriend, there was something, she was retracting the whole thing, there was no story here, none whatsoever. Then the text came out to corroborate this, and they did no such thing. And now we are at the point where the girlfriend, now ex-girlfriend, is basically filing a restraining order against him. Now, of course, the legal team of Jonathan Majors, they've already claimed this is completely standard. And yeah, it happens, but it's not standard. It typically happens when one party is afraid of the other party of some kind of interference before the trial. So, yeah, of course he has agreed to it. He has no choice in the matter but to agree to it. So this is not some kind of like gracious thing or anything like that. Now, again, hypothetically, this could just be another Amber Heard deciding, I'm going to destroy this guy. But as it is right now, if it is an Amber Heard, she is doing everything right and making him look like the villain. So we shall see how this plays out in court. But every little thing that was supposed to exonerate him has failed to materialize. And here now the courts have agreed that there is need to file a protection order against him.
It was per their request. Yeah. And I think you keyed in on the actual point here of what happened. Because notice you said X. And this was something I noticed that was happening within the course of the news over the past couple weeks. She went from still being his girlfriend to his ex-girlfriend. So I have a feeling that the wind is changing a little bit for the story here. And again, you could be right. It could be an Amber situation.
Exactly. It could be an Amber situation where she's like decided that, okay, he now no longer has any opportunities, no longer any money. So now I'm going to really destroy him and take him out for the last I can milk out of him. That could be. Or it could be that this woman and all the other people that have come out of the woodworks, and they came out early to work with the prosecutor about the previous stories that this guy has been involved with, allegedly. And the sum of that ain't a pretty picture. To me and to many others, it's all these other people coming out working with the prosecution. That's
it does need to say, though, that this is a common thing with these kind of cases, though. So that does need to be said, too, because it does point that out in this article. So, but it was requested and it was granted. And yeah, I don't get the terminology here. He agreed to it. Well, of course he's got to agree to it. He ain't got no friggin' choice. But this is not boding well because we're just about a week and a half away, I think, from his first court date. So what do you guys say to this? Razorfist, we haven't heard from you at all on this. I don't know if you've had a chance to comment on this. I haven't seen a video pop up of it yet.
I haven't been following this really. I always say reserve judgment in these cases,
right.
Because and it's not just fame. People misinterpret that this is fame. Amber Heard would have done what she did to Johnny Depp if both of them were living in a trailer park and never famous. She has a whole cocktail of mental disorders that unfortunately are on the rise with a lot of women of the kind of Zoomer and millennial generation. And those are HPD and BPD. And this is just something that's happening. You could get into the causes. This really isn't the forum to do it, but it's a disorder that is characterized by extremely performative acts of destruction after someone who you've put on a pedestal for a long time. There's a perceived slight in the situation. And so they then set out to ruin them in as public a way as possible, and preferably while casting themselves as the victim. It's like kind of it's vaguely related to schizoaffective, and it's sort of it's a compulsion, right? So Amber Heard would have done this anyway. This is one of the reasons, like,
I agree.
you combine the rising rate of this in women of this particular generation, and then the internet and phones in every pocket that can record, and it is a lethal combination that is ending careers right and left. And it's ridiculous. So I always take the wait and see approach with these kind of things. They're gonna have their whatever day in court, or more likely settlement, let's be real. But I always have a problem with these reflexive cancellations. Just the allegation itself winds up with a cancellation, unless of course you're Ezra Miller. Then you have
well, then you just don't have to worry about it. It's going to get brushed off anyway, and
right.
put under the rug. No, and I agree with you, Razorfist, and I've said that many a time. Innocent until proven guilty.
By the way, I talked about this in my Amber Heard Johnny Depp video.
You did
in detail. Yeah. This is why I mentioned that.
Well, and here's the thing that I see is different in this case compared to some of the other ones we've had, especially like Johnny Depp. And forgive me, folks, for those who are being retread ground here with this, but you have situation with Johnny never had any charges put on him, right? Like, it was her suing him and vice versa or whatever. In this case, this is actual charges. This isn't like a civil case situation.
Right.
And he's going to be going to court here in less than 2 weeks. He has had nobody, and I mean nobody, come out into his defense. Unlike Johnny, who had a slew of friends and former girlfriends and whatnot come out in defense of him. That's the big difference here as well. And there's supposedly this video, speaking of video, that exonerates him that nobody has seen yet. And then the only thing they have released are these text messages that were supposed to exonerate him. And to most people's opinions, all they did was solidify the original report. We have issues.
And this is the problem too.
Yeah.
You also get into another problem where I've covered the Michael Jackson allegations extensively. And there was a similar problem in that case that a lot of people don't. One of the reasons he settled in 1993 was you can have civil and criminal at the same time, which is in these kind of cases is really common. So someone can file a civil claim to get some sort of monetary reward, and then you can have criminal. And if he's in California, and I assume that he is, then it's actually legally permissible to file a civil claim before a legal one, right? Actual criminal one
is in New York, actually.
Yeah. Well, regardless, it's so the situation can be one where you don't want to give away your defense. So a lot of this exculpatory information wouldn't be out there because you might wind up having to fight a civil case as well, or vice versa, or a criminal case, right? So that could be why those didn't wind up out there in public, because you have to hold it, because otherwise the prosecution is going to be able to then adapt their entire strategy to account for the presence of that exculpatory information. That could be why that is. That would be my first speculation.
Well, as of right now, she has not gone after any civil situation that we know. Of course, from the start, she has been trying to get him out of trouble. Up until recently, she's been kind of quiet, hasn't said nothing. We've only been hearing from his lawyer, and what evidence she's put out there has been very little and not helping him, if you ask me. In fact, like I said, we heard, now it was 2.5 weeks ago, or it was 2 weeks ago Monday, wasn't it, Andre, where I reported that he was gone from the MCU? I think it was the 6th of April, actually. So it was
no, it was in March, actually. It was the week
before.
So it's 3 weeks. I think it was in March. Well, let me check that.
I think it was the 6th of April, but I could be wrong.
Well, I'm just going to go into Midnight's Edge live archives, because that's where your original report is.
Yeah, you do that. And in the meantime, so since then, like, systematically, we've heard his agents and managers have dropped him. He's lost every other project. The only projects that we haven't heard anything about have been his MCU projects. Now, we know he's done shooting at least Loki, but the rumors have been flying now ever since. Paul, what's your take on this latest news anyway?
Well, I mean, it's similar to what my previous take was that I think we're applying the logical constructs of our legal system against a bunch of whacked out people. And it's almost as if they should be treated like a separate organism, a different subgroup of human species, because these people have so much money and their sex is weirder and they do bizarre things to each other. And they're often very broken human beings. And I'm thinking, who's more broken, Johnny or Amber? Like, they're both crazy people. And somehow we're applying non-crazy rules against this whole zoo. And so that's the part that I'm, that to me as a comedian, is more the most fascinating part, is that these people are not like us, as F. Scott Fitzgerald said about the very wealthy actors and everybody in that realm of show business. They're not like us. Why are we putting them in the regular legal system? We need to put them in front of like Judge Judy or something like that. So at least it's entertaining.
Right.
That's what I think. I mean, these people are not like me. I cannot relate to them. How am I supposed to relate to them?
Yeah, this is a good point, of course. But luckily we have like these trials for our entertainment. So it's gold kudos to Johnny Depp, who made like the biggest story since O.J. Simpson. But as for the date of your scoop, Tom, it was actually April 12th. So
and
yeah.
Speaking of showbiz, what would the Johnny Depp trial have been without his attorney, who was killer?
Yeah, she made partner.
Right, based on that.
For her. Yeah.
Based on that trial. I mean, she was a great casting decision. Let's just call it that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. I mean, really, I mean, she did win the trial for him at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Amber Heard's casting was terrible. She needed whatever CCA or whatever the agency is in Hollywood. Yeah. Central casting. She would have been better off with Joe Pesci,
Wow, my cousin Vinny is actually a very good look at what the court system's really like.
In the defense of her legal team, though, they did have a very difficult client to work with. When you were dealing with a client who acts completely crazy on the stand, and when you have, of course, you can have experts that say everything, but the experts that they found, well, they looked pretty crazy too. Like that one dude in particular.
The one that was the wrong guy they hired accidentally?
Yeah, that was the rumor after the fact. She did it so badly. The guy who seemed like
you couldn't write this shit.
No,
like,
you
that's
can't.
The thing. I can't wait for the dramatization of the
I know. I can't wait for the movie. I hope Johnny Depp will star in it. That would be
That'd
amazing.
Be funny.
Hollywood couldn't write it because it's actually funny.
Exactly.
And then my dog stepped on a bee.
Johnny Depp will be banned from playing himself.
Right.
They should get that guy from Disney World or whatever it is that looks just like him. Did you see that going around?
Yeah.
There's been a bunch of viral videos of this guy who's the new who's playing Sparrow at the parks, and he looks and sounds just like a young Johnny Depp.
He's good.
That's the only reason I know it's not Johnny Depp is because, like, dude, A is way too young, and B, he didn't have the tattoos. So it's like, yeah, that's clearly not Johnny Depp, but he looks and sounds just
you don't have
like
tattoos on your eyeyelids, you're not Johnny Depp.
That's right.
There's a weird, like, Elvis impersonator thing that goes on with Jack Sparrow, actually, in that. I don't know if you... There was a regular customer when I worked at the comic book store who dressed and acted and used the accent or whatever of Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean every day. We called him Captain Jack Asshole. He was a total clown, but he would come in all the time.
That would be great to get the Vegas era Jack Sparrow.
Right. Fat golden gray suit. Yeah.
That's right. Gold lemon
come to the Jack Sparrow show.
Get the girdle going.
That's right. We're the chickens.
Yeah. Psychotic's been a member for 7 months. Thank you so much for that. Brandon, the anime guy, says Mario Brothers is Japanese for Golden Week, 100% there for it. The movie is great, and the Japanese will be superior. God effing speed.
When does it open?
This week, I guess.
This week. Yeah.
As I said, they were waiting for a holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm predicting a massive failure, as you know.
Of course not. Yeah. Why would Mario be a hit in Japan?
I have no idea.
None. Brandon the Anime Gay also became a member. Thank you for that.
And I will have to say the fact that it's been a huge success in the United States has whetted their appetites even more. Like they are chomping at the bit to get at the movie.
You know, there's something interesting about that strategy, because it's a reversal of the strategy that was for the original Avengers. Because on the original Avengers, they released that movie in the entire world almost 1 week ahead of the US.
Yep.
So America was chomping at the bit to get that movie, especially when you had the word of mouth from across the pond,
right,
from all over the world, on Twitter, Facebook, and everything, that this is the best comic book movie ever, bar none. That was the word of mouth. There was like so much hype, so much excitement, and this is kind of like the reversal of that situation. Now it's Japan that had to wait for something that arguably is theirs.
Yep.
And it's going to be more theirs, because the voice cast apparently is the original Japanese voice cast that they already know from the games. So that's brilliant. And then you have this amazing word of mouth coming in from all of the rest of the world, other than South Korea. Like everything is set for like one of the biggest hits of all time in the theaters over there.
Yeah, I think this is boding well for this film. It looks like it's going to do well. Jeff C sends in $4.99, says Chato should have a talk show focusing on issues like woke istophobes and I think I'm straight, with Tom as the bodyguard. Rest in peace, Jerry Springer. You kind of do look a little like Jerry Springer.
I don't know how. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I look like Don Knotts also.
That too, yeah.
We're going to have Chato's final thought at the end here? Or?
That's right. That's right.
So now that we've seen two whores pearl at each other's weaves for the last hour, I think you'll need to be kind to each other.
That's right. Now that it's turned out that they're both actually men.
I think
you're right.
A delightful message today, and that is that hookers don't give change.
Right.
If you let your daughter live in a car with a 300-pound man that's 20 years her elder, you know things just aren't going to go right. Thank you very much for watching.
Maybe the problem is you. No.
That's right. Maybe you should have raised your daughter differently.
Right. I also tried not to read too much into the fact that the backdrop when he sat down for his final thought kind of looked like a massage parlor. I'm just saying, throwing that out there.
You know, we need a little Jerry Springer in the world. That's what's sad is he's gone now, but
just a little bit.
What the world needs now. Anyway,
he was the mayor of Cleveland or something also.
For a couple of years, yeah.
And he was almost moved on to higher office, but someone else gave him a hand.
Yeah, I remember that. Master Clockwork says Disney Star Wars, the movies suck, the shows suck, the books suck. No one cares about the comics and games. The games are okay.
Well, yeah, and I mentioned this before the stream, actually. This is, apropos. It looks like the way they plan to revive the Star Wars brand is through video games. They just announced like 9 of them. So I think that maybe.
And you know what's funny is that it shows Disney's lack of hipness. So if I was running the Disney operation, first of all, I would announce that I'm cratering the most recent Disney Star Wars, and we're going to start from scratch. And the second thing I would do is reissue Disney Dark Forces for a lark and make it play for free for everyone. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the Doom Engine version of it.
And Jedi Knight, its sequel, was arguably even more legendary.
Yeah, and it's just silly fun, and it's not billion-dollar games. It's just releasing stuff that make people feel good about the franchise.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that people were actually a little cranky about Rogue One, was that it decanonized Kyle Katarn, the main character of Dark Forces, because he he was supposed to be the one who grabbed the Death Star plans. That was supposed to be the idea there, and so the Corkin suit of Rogue One actually flew in the face.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's such an old game, though, but it was so fun.
It was,
and this is what's lacking in a lot of the admin is just fun, and I don't know where. I mean, they just don't have it in them. They have no concept about being communicative to the fans, and doing groovy stuff. Oh, groovy, sorry, fun things. I'm showing my age.
Yeah, carbon dating yourself there.
I sure did. Groovy, man. Groovy. We did say it back in the day. But I mean, hell, I did see Johnny Winter live, so everyone go to hell.
Did you? Apparently, there wasn't a white backdrop. So you
for Johnny Winter. No,
yeah,
Johnny Winter was. We were mad at him because Mountain opened with Leslie West, and that was fantastic. Johnny Winter came on, played for 20 minutes, and left. Then the light came on, and we went, "What?" And boy, the place was right. We were ready to tear down Maple Leaf Gardens. Like, what the hell was that about? We get it. You were a former heroin
Canadians
addict.
Raise their voice. That's the closest you guys get to a riot, right?
Yeah, we were mad. I'm telling you, the audience was really, really pissed. Bing, lights went up. Where'd Johnny go? that was it. But Mountain was fantastic. So yeah, I'm glad I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and got to see some phenomenal bands and music and see. I mean, yeah, that was great. Oh my God, you saw Mountain too. I hate you. It was great. They're good. Mississippi Queen, you know what I mean.
Action Com says, Tom, watch out. Dun, dun, dun. I hear Minnesota might come at you for liking the wrong thing. What's going on? I don't know. I'm glad I don't live in Minnesota.
What did you like?
I am too.
I don't know, but they're talking about making I think dead naming and stuff like that illegal or some shit like that in Minnesota.
Widmer, who's out of her mind, apparently. Dead naming. She wants to make it illegal.
I'd like to see this fly with the First Amendment. But yeah.
This is the other thing too is that, like I said, this is a fad. It's clear that it's dying.
Yeah, it's why whenever a fad dies, what happens? It reaches its natural extremity.
Yep.
And so it gets more and more cartoonish.
Yes.
As a result finds less willing converts.
Oh, Whitmer is Michigan, not Minnesota. Wow,
yeah,
I'm an American. I'm a Canadian. Why would I know?
Considering he knows that, we'll still give him a point.
Thank you.
Right. And the fact that you even know.
I don't even know.
It's one of those states up near us. Whatever.
Yeah, it's one of the cold places. We get it.
No, that's the one that the FBI in that entrapment case basically incited that guy to that fake kidnapping plot against her. That's Whitmer. That's the one.
Was it fake?
Yeah, it turned out that it was the FBI had engineered it, trying to.
Oh my God!
They were all behind it. So yeah. Basically for either her political benefit or just to wrangle up what they construed to be domestic terrorists or something. I have no idea. But,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I do know. I mean, there's some hardcore people in Michigan. So
yeah,
you would have to be to stay in that state at this point.
I agree.
They need RoboCop now. Horseradish Power says Return to Silent Hill needs to have an end credit scene where James discovers that everything is being controlled by a Shiba dog, or it will suck. Who wrote that? Kathleen Kennedy?
Indeed. Have you gotten that fake ending or that Easter egg ending of Silent Hill 2? Yeah, they always have a joke ending, right? There's I think it was Silent Hill 1 you were at the end, if you did something very specific over the course of the game, you got a UFO ending. You were all abducted in a UFO at the end of the game. And then in Silent Hill 2, that's the one with Pyramid Head and all that. I forget exactly what happens, but you go to you find a control room. You open a door and walk into a control room, and there's Pyramid Head at the controls with a bunch of television sets in front of him, basically manipulating the entire Silent Hill game. And then he takes off his helmet, and it's a Shiba Inu dog. It's that's been controlling the Pyramid Head robot the entire time. It's probably the best Easter egg ending.
Yeah, someone, I don't know Pyramid Head. Someone has mentioned Pyramid Head in relation to fighting Mr. Canoe Head.
Oh, hey, that's not bad.
So I don't know if you've seen Mr. Canoe Head. I'll just.
I have.
He's a hero.
Here we go. There's Mr. Canoe Head.
I love it.
Canada's aluminum-headed crime fighter.
Fused to his head.
That's right.
An accident.
Him meeting Pyramid Head would be a proper Avengers level event.
Yeah, somebody mentioned that they should pit Pyramid Head versus Canoe Head.
Yeah. Have you ever seen Pyramid Head, Mr. Chato?
I have not, but people have
you have to check out Silent Hill the movie.
Okay. Yeah, he's featured
for that specific reason.
I don't like horror movies.
Oh yeah, well you still have to see it just to see what this team.
Someone send him a picture.
Ladies
and gentlemen,
I'm trying to get up the nerve to watch Taxidermy. I'm doing it, I believe, tonight.
I can't wait to talk to you about that.
I want to see it.
Top of the ropes, Thunderheart is here.
Fellow Canadian.
That's right, and he sends in 55 Canadian dollars. Holy crap, holy. He must be gear jamming like crazy. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Go ahead and read that, Andre. Give him the honor.
Yeah, absolutely. Rod Thunderheart says for 55 Canadian dollars, hail Midnight's Edge in the morning. A few more dollars to promo to see through love. A Spanish teacher who can become invisible is shocked to find new gym teacher is blind, but can see her when she's invisible. His past returns, she sees her caught in lust, secret powers, and government conspiracies. So yeah, everyone check out See Through Love.
Yes, indeed. And speaking of which, also do check out Razorfist's book as well. And yes, I'm sure the mods will share the link for both. We got Horseradish Power, who says Silent Hill is nothing like the original game. The town in the film was based on Centralia. Am I saying that right? Probably not. Virginia. Yeah. Should be a resort town like in Maine. Gan's effort, thumbs down.
Well, I respectfully disagree. I would even though it may deviate from the game, but again, I have never played the game. I am not a gamer, which is why I'm able to appreciate it on its own merit. I think it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah. It's very true to the spirit of the game without being a direct adaptation of it. Right. He invents his own characters and crosses over a few, but essentially he takes kind of the broad strokes of the theme of the game and certainly mimics the style. Like he transposes that virtually from the video game screen. And then he sort of goes off and running on his own thing, which is probably the most appropriate way to create a video game adaptation, honestly, unless you're going to do it frame for frame or something, but I think that to this day is the most faithful in spirit to any video game movie anyways.
Well, Horseradish, you're obviously welcome to your opinion, but I would not want to sit there and debate it with Andre and Razorfist. Those are two people.
Yeah, I love that. And then they just actually released the collector's edition of Silent Hill on Blu-ray in like 4K or something like that.
Well, really? Is it 4K? Is it the director's approved color timing?
I'm not sure if it's 4K, actually. I know it's a collector's edition. It's got a bunch of extra stuff and a bunch of new interviews, and it is a way better image transfer than the original.
Because here's like the thing that there already is a French release that the director approved the image transfer of. So hopefully it is that one which now has been ported over to the US, because this is I hope so, because here's like the thing.
I remember a 4K of Silent Hill.
The original Blu-ray that was the first Blu-ray release that was released by Sony for the American market and mainland Europe was utter rubbish.
Yeah,
So much
I don't
so.
even think it had any of the extra features. It was one of those. The early Blu-rays were so bizarre.
It didn't have many extras, but the worst was that like the colors were washed out and everything, and this was a visual experience.
Probably because
So
it was
for the
just
French
the
market,
same scan they had for the DVD.
Christopher Gans, he oversaw like not the director's cut because the exact same cut, but a disc or a release that had his personally approved color timing with a whole extra disc of bonus material. That's the one I have. So hopefully this is the director's approved color timing that has been released.
This sounds like
by the-
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that. It's Shout Factory released.
Yeah,
It's
well,
relatively
they do good work, so hopefully it's
Then
the one that I
likely
had
that's what they're using.
Yeah.
But we do have a new guest joining us here for just a short period of time to talk about a very special bit of news that came across this week. I don't know who's all aware of this, but Disney decided they were going to sue Ron DeSantis. So we have a specialist coming in right now to talk to us about this. You all know him, and hopefully you love him. I don't think Razorfist has met him yet, but I know Paul and the rest of the crew have. Mr. WDW Pro
Oh, yes.
of thatparkplace.com. Welcome.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time until I and Razorfist somehow forge a loving relationship. So I'm here to endeavor to make that happen. Razorfist, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you, man.
And
yes,
it's been because of this DeSantis news. We're going to talk a little bit about that right now. But welcome.
It's bizarre. Well, it's not necessarily bizarre once you understand it, but it needs to be broken down simply because it is complex. And as we all know, the news media rarely deals with complex things in a way that's understandable. They tend to like to break things down into easy to understand chunks and then also misdirect away from the things that are true. When it comes to the situation with the Walt Disney Company and what's going on in Florida, you have to understand that Disney decided earlier in 2022 that they wanted to become a political entity. They wanted to weigh in on a highly divisive, contentious issue involving children. Now, anytime you want to weigh in on a political issue that involves children, you're going to run into some trouble there. Now, it's not that Disney is wrong per se. I'm not here to make any kind of judgment as to whether or not Disney should take the position that they are taking. Rather, what is interesting to me is that Disney has taken a position at all because other companies elected that this was not in their best financial interest to do so. And so there's no problem at all for Universal Studios. They continue to operate just the same as they did before. But for Disney, what they did is they decided that not only would they come out and condemn the state of Florida for their actions, again, prohibiting children from having official curriculum in preschool through third grade classrooms dealing with bedroom issues. And Disney came out and condemned that, but they went a step farther. They also came out and said that they would take political action. They would put their dollars where their mouse mouth was, and they were going to take action to try to have this revoked, removed, and expunged. Well, the issue there is that once that happened, Disney became a political actor inside the state of Florida. And as we all know, once you become a political actor, you gain political enemies. And for Disney, they were particularly vulnerable. Again, I'm not assessing whether or not Disney is right or wrong. That's for the audience. You guys have a brilliant audience out there. They all know whatever they think about this issue. But once Disney had done this, there were some vulnerabilities which were exposed. In particular, Disney had a very tremendous sweetheart deal down in Florida, unlike any other company. They essentially operated a Vatican City type area called a special district. That special district is Reedy Creek Improvement District. And it essentially made Disney the owners of a Vatican City inside Central Florida. They had governmental powers that gave them a huge competitive advantage over everyone else. Every company out there would love to have the kind of powers that Disney held. The only problem was that much of those powers were only there because Florida chose to look the other way for decades. We won't go into the weeds about why Disney had been operating in a way that was less than forthright and put them in a highly vulnerable spot, but just suffice to say that was the case. Now, what is happening is that after all of the maneuvers that have taken place, the Reedy Creek Special District that Disney once had and gave Disney essentially proxy government powers, that's gone. It's completely dissolved. It no longer exists. It only exists in the minds of heavy dosage pixie dusters out there. However, the issue is that Disney doesn't like that. And they've elected to sue not only the representatives on the board of the new district that handles their area, but also the governor of Florida. Now, here's where we do need to get in the weeds for just a moment to explain what's going on so that everybody understands. And credit goes to Andrew of Legal Mindset, the channel over there that was dealing with. He is actually an attorney who specializes in special districts in Florida. Go figure. But here's what's very interesting about this, and I think the audience will enjoy it. You won't hear this in very many places at all, and this is why it's fascinating. Disney could have sued the new special district that dissolved the powers that Disney had before. They could have sued them, and that would have made a lot more sense. They would have been the defendant in federal court, and Disney could have claimed that they were being wrongfully targeted for free speech and political speech, etc., and have at it, right? Fair enough. Everybody deserves their day in court if they feel they've been wronged. Again, taking no position. However, Disney didn't do that. And there's a very interesting reason. And the audience, I think, will be interested in it. Here's what's going on. Disney avoided naming the special district that is new and that controls all of their resorts as the defendant because that special district holds bonds which are then paid back and indebted to Disney because Disney operated two sort of fake cities since the 1960s in order to operate their sort of fake special district. All of this predicated on the idea that Walt had that he was going to build real cities, and then Disney, after his death, decided that was hard. They'd still like to maintain the government powers, but not actually have real citizens living there. And so all of those bonds totaling above $1 billion, that's a real problem if Disney sues the holder of the bonds. And guess what? Because Disney is by and large the only property owner within the boundaries of what was Reedy Creek, all those bonds, if they get in trouble, if Disney puts them into a perilous position, it harms Disney itself. And so Disney is doing this very strange thing where they are literally suing anybody and everybody they can except for the usual defendant you would see, because if they sue them, they expose themselves. All of this intended probably to simply gum up the legal works in hopes that Ron DeSantis will be gone soon and that Disney will be able to find a replacement and then heavily promote them into office. It is a huge situation down in Florida. And for those of you who think, well, that's just a little bit too complex, I'm not interested in this, that's a little bit out of the normal lane, let me say this, and then I'll wrap up the explanation of it. Understand that what is at stake in Florida is by far the biggest sum of money that Disney has ever had at risk. By having their special district dissolved, by losing their government powers, they are now able to be taxed just like other companies. They are now able to have their roadways managed just like every other entity out there. They no longer control, by being their own Vatican City, everything to do with the processes of government. And because of that, this situation in Florida has the potential to impact Disney at the level of not just billions, not just tens of billions, but literally hundreds of billions of dollars, because assuming that Disney World stays there for 100 years and assuming that taxation now will occur against the company, potentially including toll roads, including property taxes, including meeting the requirements now of having their attractions inspected by the state, we're talking about huge, huge sums of money now at stake. And it's why Disney is operating in a very strange way, literally suing anybody they can to try to stop this.
Wow. Well, thank you for the breakdown there, Pro. Now, Razorfist, I got to get your take on the whole Disney, DeSantis business that's been going on now for, gosh, over a year and a half almost, I think, at this point.
Yeah. And it's really the culminate. You have to understand it's the culmination of decades of Disney positioning themselves in a steadily more ideological fashion. I remember vividly in around 94 or 95, Disney World, and this was specifically Disney World. They didn't do this at Disneyland, But at Disney World, they held a gay day, I remember, and it was huge Lindbergh baby headlines for a minute there, and a bunch of family groups boycotted Disney for a brief while, and they dropped dead and whatever. They've been kind of moving in this direction steadily for some time, but I think it all kind of ramped up in the last several years. Look, Disney, the thing you have to understand about this, and you didn't really mention it, but you did kind of allude to it there, is Disney are a little over a decade. I think people don't fully appreciate. They're a little over a decade, like a decade and change removed from their last bankruptcy scare as a company. Like, I think people forget that, like, they bought a bunch of companies like Marvel and such in order to sort of claw their way out of the big almost bankruptcy they had in the early 2000s, late 90s. And they do. I don't think people appreciate how tenuous their situation could be, especially in light of many of their tentpole projects of late not being the sweeping seismic successes that they had been in the past. So I find this really fascinating. I also think we should probably mention that call that was leaked, that sort of whatever it was it company wide or
tomorrow?
Was it a share? Yes, the Imagine Tomorrow call, where there were employees who were basically just explicitly admitting to inserting propaganda into children's programs, and you're not going to stop me. Well, I think one person literally said something to that effect at one point. I basically just write these so that I can insert lots of
the exact wording was like the not so secret gay agenda, with examples to that effect.
Yeah. So I think this is all kind of, you sort of need the prelude to this. That was a crazy story. It didn't surprise me at all. I think the thing that bothers me the most about it is I did a video years ago about the history of Hollywood and the Red Scare in Hollywood in the mid 40s and into the early 50s, which later was ratified by the Venona Papers. There was actually funding of communists in Hollywood to insert propaganda into films. That came out in the mid 90s when we had the Venona intercepts and the KGB archives went open. But the interesting thing about that chapter is that Walt Disney, who rarely took political positions, he had to be browbeaten into speaking. He spoke at the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings in 1946, a committee that had originally been convened to root out Nazis in the Bund in America, and later was sort of forced to look at communists because they became aware of it as a result of union politics, an attempted union takeover. There was a man named Herb Sorrell who ran an organization called the Conference of Studio Unions, which was a communist front. It was funded by the Soviets. And they attempted to strong-arm Walt Disney's cartoonists into being corralled under their umbrella. And the cartoonists, who were very loyal to Walt Disney, went to him and said, can you do something about this? They're trying to take over our cartoonists union, and we don't want to join, and we know that they're a communist front. And Walt Disney initially said, I don't want to get into it. I'm not supposed to get involved in union politics. I'm not supposed to. Finally, he had to, because so many of his animators went to him. So he came out and spelled out what happened with Herb Sorrell. Herb Sorrell apparently had bragged to him at one point, we have the, what did he say? The exact quote was something like, oh, I'm not a member of the Communist Party, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, but I do love spending their money. And stuff like that, right? So we've now gone from a place where Walt Disney's only political stance, his only canonical stance in life, was he was defending his own cartoonists and taking a stand against a communistic takeover of unions in Hollywood, which, by the way, that's where the myth that he's an anti-Semite comes from. That was a smear that came from socialist newspapers at the time, and unfortunately it stuck. So that unfortunately is still with us. And now we've migrated to a point where Disney are removing or reducing the size of black characters and posters so that they can capitulate to the communist Chinese. and engaging in an ideological agenda that is by proxy funded by the communist Chinese. Because this is open knowledge. The CCP, though they do not allow what they call aberrant lifestyles of any kind in China, they're more than happy to fund them abroad, and they fund them to the tune of millions in America, which is where a lot of ESG funding comes from. So we've now migrated from the exact opposite position of where Walt Disney was in 1946 with the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings, to a place where the company is basically on the side of the people that Walt Disney testified against. It's that's my takeaway from it. I honestly think the company shouldn't even be called Disney any longer, because it stands for the exact opposite of what the man stood for.
Well, it is the Bob Iger company these days.
Pretty much.
Really, it is. Yeah. And before that, it was the Michael Eisner company and yada yada. Right? I don't think it has much to do with Disney at all.
Well, your references were tremendous. I'm quite impressed on how easily you were able to just recall all of that. It's quite impressive to think about the history of the company. Now, I know that for so many people, they say, well, let adults be adults and it doesn't matter, and everybody should choose their own lifestyle, etc. I think where Disney stepped into a big pile of mouse goo here is that they got into the situation of dictating what should be taught to very small children. And that gets them into a highly contentious place. It's one thing for them to have unofficial days for people to go and celebrate their sexuality at the parks. It's another thing to say to parents in Northern Florida that their 4-year-old should be taught about bedroom issues before the parent perhaps is even comfortable doing that their own selves. We can all have our own personal opinions about when that should happen and how that should happen and the role of the state, etc. But for a children's entertainment company to do that is, well, it's an interesting financial decision. But what I would say to everybody out there is you need to be paying close attention to this bond issue. This bond issue is a big, big deal. It's not going to be covered by your typical sites covering Disney, but it's a huge deal because what happened was, as we said, before Walt passed away, they essentially decided they were going to put 2 cities in the Walt Disney World area, those being the city of Bay Lake and Lake Buena Vista. Now, those 2 cities never really materialized beyond just being cities in name only. In fact, the only residents who live in those cities are people that Disney chooses to put into hidden mobile home parks that Disney operates. There's a single cul-de-sac for each city, quote unquote. The issue here, though, not only does the whole pseudo-city thing reek of fraud. Now, I'm saying that as speculation, right? Not a declaration of objective fact, but in my opinion, it reeks of fraud. But the bigger issue here is that vast amounts of money were tied into bonds issued by these cities, by this special district. Now, those bonds, by virtue of being what they are, they have to be certified as being part of a public entity. They cannot be something different than what they are claimed to be. Bonds cannot be part of Disney proper when they're being claimed to be part of city governments. And so these municipal bonds now, well, if it turns out that Disney actually was one and the same with Reedy Creek, then, oh my gosh, there are huge, huge fraudulent issues that could come up in court. And again, that's why Disney, they're terrified of having their fiefdom controlled by DeSantis, but they're not willing to sue the actual new district that should be the normal defendant because it could expose them to even more, and it may yet happen. People, this is the thing nobody's talking about, but it should be on your radars. By coming here and watching Midnight's Edge, you should be ahead of everybody else and know this is a big deal. If it happens 6 months, a year from now, that this breaks into the headlines, you'll know, hey, I knew this was coming.
Indeed, this is a great place to keep to bring talented people together who knows a little bit about everything, and just Razorfist and WDW Pro together. I just sit back in awe at the information being exchanged.
Yeah.
Well, so much is owed to, and I'll tell you this too. So, Mexican Iron Man. really the other day had some great information on this, looking through exactly what Disney is alleging and in the lawsuit that they're filing. And so we're going to continue to keep investigating this with people who are in orbit of this channel. I will say, though, for any of you out there who are hopeful that Disney is stepping away from the woke, or that they're going to become a more moderated company, I would not hold my breath, because at every step of the way, Disney could have simply said, let's go for a ceasefire at this time. Let's see if we can negotiate with Florida behind the scenes. Maybe we disagree. Maybe we disagree about how children should be educated in state-sponsored school systems. Fine enough. But let's see if we can get a ceasefire, and we'll come to some agreement. Disney has elected not to do that at every single step of the way. And this is really now the last Hail Mary they have. This could go all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And if you think that Disney is moderating, you should really reconsider, because on the line, as I said, are not billions of dollars, not tens of billions of dollars, but the hill they wish to die on, the woke hill they wish to die on, where hundreds of billions of dollars are at stake, is whether or not 4-year-olds should be taught about bedroom issues officially by school systems. That's weird.
I think we have gone a little bit beyond that. But sorry, Razorfist, carry on. I have a thesis that I wanted to present, but
I apologize.
No, you did first. Go first.
By way of corollary, a good example of what tends to happen politically when you allow the children of a given voting bloc to be melded to a political cause celebre is what we saw in Virginia with the election of Glenn Youngkin. That's basically what he rode into the governor's mansion. He broke a Democratic dominion with a well-known Democratic challenger that was expected to win. Glenn Youngkin basically just said, hey, I won't mess with your kids. And boom, he's governor of Virginia. That was essentially his entire platform. He just said, the schools will leave you alone. You'll have school choice, and so on. This is that. And ladies and gentlemen, that was a much milder variant of this controversy, a much milder variant. I think this is a grave, if Walt Disney is indeed a political entity now, then this is a grave political miscalculation.
Well, so in the lawsuit, and Mexican Iron Man, I see you out there in the chat, and we'll get to that, because he's on this even more than I am. He understands this even more than I do. But in the lawsuit, Razorfist, you won't believe this. Disney actually claims that they were targeted because of their political speech. So Disney has self-identified as being politically active. It's a bizarre thing.
It is. Wow. And this is the thing a lot of people don't realize is in lawsuits of this type, you can identify yourself as a particular body without even realizing it, and thereby recategorize the nature of, you can actually change what the bar is that your opponents need to hurdle in order to prove your culpability, right? Because of the way the legal framework in the courts actually works. So by positioning themselves as a political entity in defense of their political speech, they've essentially now categorized themselves into a different area, and now there's an entirely different strata of requirements that they have to observe. And I very much doubt that the Disney Corporation is abiding by all of those strictures.
Well, it's an odd place for sure for Disney. I would also say to this that you're starting to see other studios realizing that Disney is in a highly vulnerable position now. We're seeing Tom Cruise with the Mission Impossible movie moving up the release date, cutting into Indiana Jones 5's box office run. That doesn't happen unless theaters are willing to entertain the idea that they can cut ties with Disney and give premium screens to other companies. You're seeing Mario exploding, and depending on how this goes with the Golden Week in Japan, Mario may be the highest grossing animated feature-length film of all times. Can you believe that? Taking the crown from Disney. And so you're seeing these other companies realizing just what a faux pas Disney has stepped into time and time again. Universal Studios, now we are hearing, is looking at doing a major expansion in Florida, bringing the Zelda franchise into Islands of Adventure. That's early days, so it is rumor and speculation. But these are the kinds of steps that happen when other companies sense that another company is acting senselessly.
Indeed. And the scenario that I wanted to run with you is that I submit that this very much so is Iger's fault, because this whole situation started under Bob Chapek. But Chapek didn't want it to come to this. He was pressured to take his stand. He was pressured by Victoria Alonso and a whole faction, well-organized faction within Disney that we know now was led by Bob Iger. And I think that we know now that there were backroom talks between Ron DeSantis and the Chapek administration and his partners in crime, namely Ike Perlmutter, and they were also talking with
Nelson Peltz.
Nelson Peltz, thank you. And that's why Perlmutter was so desperate to have Peltz on board, because otherwise Iger would be back, and then who knows what would happen then. I think that if Chapek had been there, if he had gotten the support needed, he could have gotten rid of more of his resistance, and then through backdoor talks, there would have been some kind of solution with Florida that would have given both parties a win that they could live with. But the moment that Iger came back, that was gone. There were no more backdoor talks. Now you have egos talking. So now it's no longer about this political issue that this whole thing started with. Now it's a matter of ego, pride, and everything like this. Now it's a matter of Daddy Iger needs to get his wins. And he got his wins in the very friendly Hollywood trades. But that gave DeSantis egg on his face. So then he needed to take an aggressive stance the other way. And then the whole thing escalated, and it could only have escalated that way under Iger. This would never have happened the way that it did without him.
I agree. It's important also to keep in mind that, of course, DeSantis is a presumable frontrunner in the upcoming election. This is only pertinent because it adds an incentive for him to act very aggressively and very decisively on this, because otherwise he looks weak, especially at a time when he's polling behind the actual frontrunner in the GOP field, right? So terrible miscalculation.
Which is Jeb Bush?
Right, Jeb Bush, of course. He's sweeping the.
That's actually a great segue, though. So, Andre, your thought is exactly right, as is so often the case. But talking about Jeb Bush, here's the segue, the connection to that. Just as you were assuming that this is part of Iger's plan and his insistence in going in a very far-leaning particular direction, that's exactly right, because one of the first things in removing Chapek that occurred was that Chapek lost his senior executive of communications, that being Jeff Morrell. Now, Jeff Morrell was a Jeb Bush guy, somebody who was able to navigate Florida on both sides. You can think of Jeb Bush as being very moderate, and so was Jeff Morrell. He had also been the spokesperson for the Pentagon. So very friendly with both sides of the political aisle. But he was removed very quickly, and Christina Shockey was brought in. Now, she is a political operative. She's well connected with the Obamas and the Clintons and all of that, but she is strictly a political person. She is not necessarily a communications individual. She is highly invested in the divisiveness of the world politico. She is now the senior executive vice president and chief communications officer of the Walt Disney Company, and she was just renewed for another year and a significant raise under Iger. She reports directly to him, and her elevation in the company signals that the company, they have not had enough of going in a singular political direction. They want to go farther. She is the kind of person you hire if you want to run a political campaign, not a children's family entertainment corporation.
And also, just to add to that, to basically how the former PR, that Chapek's PR under Disney, he was friendly with the Bushes. DeSantis is also friendly with Jeb Bush and company.
Indeed.
So right there, you have people that know each other. And Iger, he came in between that. But before we carry on, we are losing Mr. Chato here. So let's see if we can run through some super chats for him, and then WW Pro, if you have a few more minutes, would love to have you on a little while longer to discuss some more Disney matters.
Absolutely. I hate that I couldn't spend more time with Paul. He's always fantastic.
You were on a roll there. I didn't say a word.
Mario Trulio says, "Oh, Chato,
Well, I wish you would.
How wrong you are. It's the greatest adventure. Also, great hearing Razorfist." Thank you so much, Mario.
Razorfist is very knowledgeable.
And then let's see here. Next one for Paul. I think
the one thing I would say about the Disney thing is the only thing I can add is that I think culturally, I believe there are people there who believe they are bigger than the country. That Disney is more important, because you just wouldn't get into this kind of silly scrape if you knew what you were doing. It's such nonsense. But yeah, there are people there who feel that Disney has an outsized influence on the country and will not be dissuaded from their goals.
Paul, would you say you would at least cut your ties with a country that is trading body parts, maybe before you started telling, before you died on this hill? Maybe
unless you can get them at a discount. No,
right, exactly.
Well, maybe a few jejunums there, kidney
Don't
here.
forget, I am a former network executive. I have really very few values. And whatever I did
and with that, perhaps even less organs.
They've been traded away. As I always say, I do have integrity, and it's available for the highest bidder.
But I do have to say, just as one postscript before you say farewell, I think this puts to rest the narrative that was out there in the ether for a short amount of time, that Iger had a gun to his head from the ideologues and that he was just being pushed along and whatever.
Yeah.
I think it is well and truly that narrative has been put to bed.
He's the general, baby.
Yeah.
Or he's at least pliable.
No, the problem, I think that the ideologues, they are someone that Iger deliberately staffed the company with for his own purposes. He's not a true believer himself. But the problem is, when you put enough inmates into the asylum, suddenly he finds himself in a situation that he never had anticipated, namely one where the inmates in part are running the asylum, which is kind of what we're seeing now. I think that he has lost a little bit of control.
Well,
but
when I was there at the 90s, the inmates were not so obvious, but they were there at Disney. There was no secret.
Like, for instance, in the presentations that was just a few weeks back, where Iger was talking about the responsibility that the company had to its employees. That was pretty amazing to listen to, how he would let the employees direct where the company is going politically. That being said, though, he said that as he was preparing to let go thousands of them. And as for your assertion, WDW Pro, that, well, not assertion, but like that your suggestion that things might not get better at Disney, maybe they won't. I don't know, but I would wait a little bit, because a lot of woke folk have lost their jobs in the last couple of weeks here.
I think we need a leadership change. Until there's a leadership change,
I agree. We need Iger gone. But as it is right now, there's many people below him that were really pushing the wokeness, like pushing it hard, and they've gotten fired in the last 2 weeks. I would not count Disney out completely just yet, because at this point it's about Iger's legacy as well. And Iger, he's not a true believer in wokeness. He just isn't. He uses it for a tool. And I think that he's smart enough to see that this has now run its course. And it's going to be his legacy, that he was the one who brought Disney under with wokeness? I think there's a very good chance he's trying to remove some of the poison from Disney using these mass firings right now, because now thousands upon thousands upon thousands are losing their jobs, and among them are some of those pushing the wokeness. So I want to wait and see how this proceeds going forward. I would not count Disney out just yet.
as the forlorn Star Wars fans always say, there's always a new hope.
Exactly. And as long as Jon Favreau remains in the building, we always have the faint hope that power may shift back in his favor. It's a faint hope indeed, and we have Spaceballs if it doesn't. But I'm not willing to give up that faint hope.
Oh, and like this is reminds me that we're heading into the same direction as when I went to school with Stalinists in the university in the 70s, and they were staunch.
They're teachers now, Paul.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and you were growing up in the late 60s, early 70s. What's amazing about that is we already knew about the crimes of Stalin. These were real believers.
And it wasn't until Glasnost when Gorbachev released the Stalin papers, and my quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes here, quotes, friends started reading the actual stories of what Stalin did. I'd get phone calls of them weeping to me. Paul, I had no idea that this is all true. And they were, so I'm envisioning an awful lot of weeping people who will have felt betrayed by Iger and the end to their campaign.
Yeah, there's born one every minute, and there's no shortage of supply of useful idiots.
Yes.
But to continue with your super chat.
Yes, let's do that.
Tommy Tables says for $6.99 Canadian. Chato, didn't Trudeau say Canada is a post-national state without its own culture? What's being protected then?
Well, I mean, anytime you don't have an ethnocentric state, you don't have specifically a culture. I mean, Canada really is a country of immigrants, especially when it comes to the big cities. We do have pockets of ethnocentrism, such as Newfoundland and the Ukrainian parts of our breadbasket. Other than that, and the hippies in BC. Oh, and on Vancouver Island, Empire loyalists. So don't say anything bad about the Queen.
I thought curling needed to be protected. What I mean, you guys.
Curling is a national support. Curling is a national support, although I believe people believe it's too white.
I know you haven't mentioned Quebec.
Oh yeah, there's an ethno state. I forgot about that. They're their own world. It's kind of cool. I mean,
there's a world that has to be protected.
We need to protect Quebec, if for no other reason than the supply of poutine.
Exactly.
There you go. We cannot handle.
Where are all the Zamboni machines made up there? What are you guys storing those
I think it's now been it's an American company that bought out the patent for the Zamboni machines.
I'm sorry, we are playing a part in the destruction of Canada.
You are.
Although
we did invent the zipper and the paint roller, and we live by those two stories.
We all have our sins. Brandon the Anime Guy says for $5, Paul. Trigun Stampede came out this past winter season and second season later this year. Adaptation of Trigun and Maxim from OG creator. See it.
So it's a live action version? I never heard of it. Wow. I'll have to take a look.
Yeah, guess you have to.
That was a fun Western.
Yeah.
Japanese Western.
And then I am looking for more here. Almost done. I think that's it.
Okay.
I think we are caught up. I think. Let me just see if there's some new on Mark. No. I think we are done.
I see some people out in the chat saying we should probably rename poutine for obvious reasons, but I just want to say that before you go after that one, there is I believe it's El Salvadorian. There's an El Salvadorian dish called a pupusa. And frankly, that's far more off-putting.
I didn't even make that connection because I'm just so used to poutine.
And me with pupusas. So
there you go. I have heard of that. Anyways, thank you very much, gentlemen.
It's just a pinch of seasoning.
Yeah, I need to taste one of these poutine things one of these days. So
it's
you're talking
spectacular. Plus, you put on shaved Montreal smoked meat, you will die. I am telling you. Both psychologically and practically.
Yes.
It's quite something. So yes, WD, we will get together, and Razorfist, a pleasure to be part of this stream with you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Magnificent as always.
It was a blast making your acquaintance properly, sir. I love your channel. I watch your videos all the time.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, Razorfist, are you saying that you have met Paul for the first time and myself for the first time?
I think he and I had been on a stream before.
We had a dalliance.
I was going to say, we got to stagger these things, you know?
Yeah, right. A little bit. We got to make a bigger deal out of it. It's got to be like an Avengers team up. Only people will actually be watching it now.
Well, we just love bringing people together here at Midnight.
So the next, just so you know, because you promote my stuff so well, I did manage to purchase TV Guide 1985. So that's filled in my hole. I am working on 84, and I'm working on maybe a 50-minute long video on why the Sandbaggers, it's a British show from the late 70s, is possibly one of the greatest TV shows of all time. And I'm breaking down the first show on why it is an incredible pilot and why nobody can write a pilot like this anymore. So it's
are you by any chance the inspiration for the guy on the subway with the TV Guide with Elaine on Seinfeld? So,
no, I don't think so. I've been collecting the TV Guide since the 60s.
Wow.
Most of these are all mine, and I'm filling the gap with a couple that I've got to buy. So I mean, I enjoy doing it.
I love it.
Well, I've become the TV Guide archivist,
yes,
talking about all these old shows that people have forgotten about, and it's fun. I do enjoy it. So you guys get back to the important stuff. Taking
yes, before we lose Pro here, yeah.
I will I'll get back to doing my stuff here. Thank you very much.
Take care, Paul.
The gang 6. It's been great. Oh yeah, no, this
is going to get us back into the conversation. Yep.
Yeah, no problem. Right. Bye.
Take care. Thank you. So on that note, yes, Mikey had a post here you guys brought up. It says the reason that the bonds was so important is because the municipal bonds and bonds like them are tax-free or supposed to be. So I don't know if that would get you guys back on the subject at hand. Yeah.
So if Disney was in fact one and the same as the local government there, the special district government issuing the bonds, well, if that's the case, and notice that word "if," everybody, that's the caveat that's necessary. I'm not a Florida attorney. I only talk to many of them. But if that's the case, it seems to me that is fraud, and it's fraud at a massive scale. So there's a great risk in what Disney is currently doing.
So, Andre, you said you had a little bit more you wanted to discuss before we lose Pro.
I think we actually covered it
for a hard stop.
Oh, all right.
Andre says, enough of you, Pro.
No, you're welcome anytime, and I love talking with you. But like this particular thing that I think we raised already, that we'll just have to wait and see how this is going to play out, because I see a lot of woke folk or instigators of the woke being purged from Disney right now.
Absolutely,
people I would have thought would have been protected are being removed.
Tom, if you read this, could you read it with the voice of John Wayne, please?
Well, of course I will. That was the plan all along. Where in the South is WDW Pro from? He's got a slight Southern accent.
So I have been all over the place, and there's no telling where I have picked up certain idioms and dialectual nuances from. But I will tell you this: I was criticized recently. We were doing, what was it? It was with John Golf. We were doing a video on something in Eastern Tennessee, and I said, it was the giant knife store that he went and visited. But anyway,
right.
The word Appalachia was brought up, and I think I pronounced it that way, Appalachian or Appalachia. And I was criticized by people from that area who said it's Appalachia. And so I don't know which way it actually is, but there you go.
Wow. So you're like Madonna. You go to the UK for a weekend and come back sounding like Mary Poppins.
You know, I don't actually know exactly what I sound like. I just speak and the words come out. I just never know.
It's hilarious though, because you notice she goes to China, she doesn't come back on. Oh, I got a new album, and like fucking
Album.
Oh, Lord.
I have to say, no one does the King of the Hill better than you. I cannot say in words how impressed I am with your.
Well, I fear to change the pitch, so let me see if I can do it without changing the pitch. It's been causing me errors lately to do that.
God damn it,
I'll raise my voice a little high and go, God dang it, Bobby, I tell you what, that propane is not for playing with. And put Luann's god dang finger puppets down. Oh!
There you go.
Let me do my own real quick.
Might have been a little too low. I don't know.
I'll tell you what.
You come across as the guy from the Beavis and Butthead. There's a slight difference in the way that Mike Judd does it.
Yeah, you're a little bit more Mr. Anderson there.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson.
I think Bill keeps burying his porn in our backyard. Anyway.
I love it. I love it.
Are you the kids that are in my camper whacking again?
Right.
I have to say I can only do one voice. I only have one voice in me. But luckily that is one that absolutely no one else can get just right. And that's my own.
You got.
I see.
He seems to think so.
The one that comes the closest is actually Tom.
That's just because I know the nuances more than anybody, because I've had to listen to your voice on end hours
for years now.
Days,
so yeah.
Days, yeah. But it could be worse. It could be worse. It could be. I could be working for Grace Randolph. I mean,
oh my God! Yeah, can you imagine?
Hello and welcome to another movie pass.
No, it could be way worse than that. You could be working for Iron Sheik. You know, like come on.
Oh, geez. Oh, Lord. Yeah, I don't know if he wants to answer that because it's always the elusive WDW Pro. But yes.
Well, I would just say that I have traveled a lot. So where am I from? It's hard to say. It's like Springfield.
Yeah, where there were 4 states meet. That's all.
That's right.
And then Pilgrim Media says WDW Pro, the legal mindset stream was brilliant. Yes, I was listening to you guys last night. It was great. I've been trying to get Andrew on here. He's been so, his schedule is so wacky. I'm sure you know what it's like considering. But hopefully we'll have him on next week, guys. But yeah, that was a great show you guys did last night talking about all
that went very, very deep, and I enjoyed it tremendously. I learned a lot, and I always enjoy to hop into unexplored territory. But looking at Disney's specific claims that they're making when they're suing Ron DeSantis and the members of the board, but not the board itself. All of it was just very fascinating because so much of this is clearly indicated just to slow things down, not to be real legal. It's not real issues that Disney has. It's simply an attempt to throw a lot of crazy legal theory and gum it up inside the system.
Right. Well, we want to thank you for your time, man. I mean, I know you only had a limited schedule here and you spent a little more time than you had planned, but you and Razor going back and forth on this whole business was amazing. And like I said, we all kind of just kicked back and listened to you guys give us the history of this whole thing and some little history involved with Disney and himself and all that. And
well, how fun is it that you can come across someone, and I don't know where Razor is from, but to come across somebody that you've never
is the closest I can come up with.
Well, I was looking at the Avatar and wondering, but that you can come across
Arizona.
somebody.
Arizona's in space somewhere, I think.
What part of Arizona is it okay to ask?
Phoenix.
Okay, very cool, very cool. I was in Flagstaff not long ago, but anyway, how cool is it that
voluntarily? Really? Not at gunpoint?
Well, the air smelled like Christmas tree, so I was okay. But how cool is it to be able to, talk with somebody that you've never met before and hit that flow where you're just bouncing off these different facts and historical pieces of information. It was a lot of fun, Razor. Glad to have met you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
And Andre and Tom, always an honor to get to come on your show. Yeah. I appreciate the welcome, Matt, that you have given to so many. And you continue to be a force inside of not just the American pop culture, but pop culture the globe over. So thank you so much for all that you guys do.
Thank you for the update, my friend, and you take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Take care, all.
Just love bringing people together.
Speaking of updates, hopefully everybody has seen our Conan update. that we dropped yesterday afternoon. Did you get a chance to check into that Razorfist yet?
No. What happened?
Well, nothing like mind blowing, but we did get an update on the comics and live action business. Isn't that right, Andre?
Yeah, we yesterday, for those that haven't seen it, and I know that not many notifications were sent, so shame on your algorithm. Go check out our double interview with both Fredrik Malmberg, the head of Everything Conan, and Jim Zub, the writer of the new Titan comic book series.
Hey.
And we got plenty more detail about the direction of the comics. Jim Zub, he of course wrote the best of the comics from the recent Marvel run. But this time, under Titan, it's going to be completely and utterly unleashed. They're going back to the savage sword of Conan, tonally and everything. And even the artist, Rob De La Torre, is John Buscema reborn, in my words. So I'm very excited for what is coming there.
Oh, I know him. He worked on The Shadow.
Yeah, there you go. So you see, and he's now the regular artist on the new Conan series.
Yeah, good artist. I'm a big fan of him.
And what's better yet, they're even working on the traditional Marvel way, where Jim Zub, he's basically just saying, okay, page 1, this needs to happen. Page 2, this needs to happen. So many people needs to get their heads cut off, and here we need some tits and everything, and do it your way. So basically, it's being done the exact same way that John Buscema and Roy Thomas made magic back in the day.
It's now this is kind of cool because Titan already translated some kind of pulpy stuff from France, from the French comic versions of Elric and such. They didn't. It's interesting. The same company that did the Elric that Titan translated did a Conan book in France called Glénat BD, and they did an awesome Conan series with a bunch of superstar artists in Europe that currently you can find as the Cimmerian. Titan didn't bring that series over. I don't know why. I don't know if Blaze Comics just outbid them or whatever when they translated it to English, but I would bet your bottom dollar that anything Titan is going to publish themselves is going to be in that same kind of vein, where it's very strongly rooted in the original pulp stories and violent and jiggling titties and all the stuff you love Conan for.
Yeah, exactly. And just to make it clear, because there's no Frecky Wolf, yes, there will be nipples and stuff. There will be titties.
Both of them.
Yeah, no kidding. Titan, we should mention, is a European company, so not so many strictures on the comic
have
content.
Guarantees that there will be beheadings, that there will be boobies, that there will be
blood
chopped
Let's
off.
Just put it that way.
There will be lots of blood. This is what we've been promised.
It is going to be awesome, and also, so they are free in how they're basically bringing each and every single story to life. But I want to
tell you, if you get to stick around, Razor, after the show, I hope you can, because there's a story I want to tell you about that's coming up that we can't talk about in public that I think you'll get a kick out of, because you'll get the instant, the what they're referring to, or the reference that they're making.
Okay,
I know you'll get it.
I'm just gonna say I'm very optimistic for these comics. So everyone, go check out that interview. And go and pre-order the books and everything. Give them the support, because with Western comics in general going to hell, it's really important to support the ones that aren't, and that's this one right now. And also what's really cool is that the game Conan Exiles, that thing is just growing and it's taking off more and more. So it's good to know that they're actually working on synergies, and they are working from like a sorry, what was that?
The same company also mentioned that they have some kind of plans for a Solomon Kane game. What is it? Funcom, something like that. Yeah. So I'm not sure if it's going to be in the style of an Exiles or whatever. Solomon Kane, by the way, one of the many inspirations. It's kind of like from my own comic. It's like It's like Solomon Kane in the Old West in a weird way. So kind of a similar idea.
Yeah. There's so many people that are checking out Conan Exiles now.
Or should I say this morning? I see that Nina Infinity is still live. For like 8 hours, her and Script Doctor were playing Conan straight.
It's so much fun.
Jeez,
It is what, dude. It's one of those games. You start working on your little Barbie dream house in that game, and you don't stop. It's like Fallout 4.
But the really cool thing with it is that you have like Marvel that have like this amazing cinematic universe, and they completely dropped the ball with cross promotion. Like the games are nothing like the movies, the comics. Well, the movies imitate the worst of the comics, but beyond that, there's like no synergies. If you've just seen Iron Man in theaters, you go to your comic book retailer, you're not going to get any new comics that look anything like the movies, which I thought was a gigantic waste of opportunity. But no, not here. They're going to go with some synergies. Like, that doesn't mean that, like, well, I don't know exactly. I'm not going to give any restrictions because I don't know exactly what they were saying. But what is very clear is that the visuals of the comics, everything like this, is all going to be similar to the games. And also, there's a new canon of the Conan stories. There's a new chronology of which order the stories take place in, which is not radically different from anything that's been before. I don't know the
no, but the way Zub
chronology.
put it in the interview was basically like, before you had like, oh, we have a rough idea of where things happened or what time they happened. He said, no, now we're actually putting a date on it, and they're trying to make sure that it makes sense. Like, if they tell a story around that era, it's like, would he even be remotely close to that area and all that kind of stuff. It sounds like they're really paying attention to the
They are. So like
semantics
for every single story, they basically have like a list of, okay, in this story, Conan is at this age, and he has been in this part of the world. Here, he's been in this part of the world. He's this age, stuff like that. So it's a really extensive chronology. This is the chronology that is being used in the games. This is the one that forms the map and everything there. And that is what is also informing the new comic books. So it's all part of the same canon. It's all built together. And presumably with the upcoming series, going to be the same chronology there as well. So they're really going for synergy here. So I'm very excited for the upcoming Conan productions here.
So them getting it away from Marvel was a good thing.
Very good thing. Best thing that could happen.
Yeah. They didn't I don't think Marvel, if you weren't gonna, because Savage Sword of Conan came at a very particular time for Marvel. It was a period where Stan Lee was pulling a lot of influences from other areas, manga, bande dessinée, lots of, like, I know Stan Lee read Heavy Metal magazine back in the day and was like, okay, this is the future of comics. So we got to do this epic line. We got to do all this. So Savage Sword of Conan and later Sword of Solomon Kane and stuff like that winds up being sort of Marvel's response to that, an attempt to get something more adult, something more mature out there with a stronger literary basis, whatever. That Marvel no longer exists. That Marvel has not existed for a long time. It was just a bad marriage between Marvel and Conan, honestly. It just didn't fit.
It was a very mixed bag in the most recent run, I will say, because one thing is you have like Marvel editorials with like their restrictions, but that wasn't the biggest thing. It was like many of their recent stories were hit and miss. I will say that what Jim Sub wrote was really, really good, which is why I'm excited for him going forward. He really did his work, just like Roy Thomas did back in the day. Beyond that, all the other writers that worked on it, very hit and miss. And Zub only came in the regular title in issue 13 of a 25-issue run. So before that, it had already kind of like lost steam with the wrong lead story, and it never really recovered from that. And then you had like the pencils down and everything. So yeah, all in all, the sum of it means that it wasn't properly managed over there. They didn't do anything tremendously bad. It just didn't fire on all cylinders. But what is exciting here is that they're actually able to take everything that really worked and make that even better.
How do you feel about, as a whole, how do you feel about the Dark Horse run from beginning
The
to
Dark
end.
Horse run, I think it was up to a fantastic start.
Yeah.
The Dark, because it's just for those that are listening, who may not be aware of Dark Horse, they were the ones that had the Conan license from 2003 until 2019. This was like the first modern day relaunch, which started the second golden era. The Dark Horse was off to an amazing start. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, there were changes in the editorial team as the years went by, and as that editorial team changed, the writers were no longer held to the same standards. The artists weren't always as appropriate, and then they kind of started to lose way from the direction that was initially set forth. Like the issue 0 of the Dark Horse run was something of a mission statement, because the beginning of the Dark Horse run basically starts in the future of Conan. So it starts in our past, but in the future of Conan, of like a future conqueror that goes through the lands that were once the kingdom of Conan, and just makes like an account of all the wealth and everything here. You have like this lazy little prince that there's one of the heirs of his father is not happy to be sent to like this little thing, and his Vasir, who is helping him. And then they encounter the stories of Conan, and that's basically like the backdrop. So this is the framing device for how you read the scrolls and how the adventures of Conan are in the past, which I think was a really good device, especially when you have the link and it's gradually revealed that this Vasir, who's helping the lazy prince here, is actually Toth Amon, Conan's lead villain. This was a story that was never concluded.
Yeah,
To me,
that was unfortunate.
That was a tremendous waste of opportunity.
Yeah, I had that comic on my pull list consistently when I worked in a comic store. It was always good. I worked in a comic store until about 2007, by the way, and it was still very, very good at that time. Kerry Nord was the artist on it for years. He did an amazing job.
He did incredible.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, but after like Busiek and Nord left, it was very hit and miss. Because then you no longer had the editorial team to keep things up to their standards. So you had like some writers that did really, really well, and others that did really, really shit. And I don't blame the individual writers, but the writers had to do the heavy lifting, because the editors, they just moved away from the story of the prince and the Vasir, which was the framing device that the whole thing kind of started out with, and they lost their way so badly. And that is why they also lost the license, because Fred Malmberg, he tried to speak with them over the years, but they just lost their way completely. There was no going back to it. That's when he decided, enough with this. Marvel right now is a better deal. I have more faith in what they can do. And you know what? He was right, because the years at Marvel, I will say overall, were better than the latter years at Dark Horse. So it was a step in the right direction, and look at what came out of it. They found Jim Zub, who I would say is the modern day heir to what Roy Thomas and Chuck Dixon used to be. He does what they used to do, closer to Roy Thomas, but still he does what they used to do. This is someone who loves genre, he loves sword and sorcery, he loves his role-playing games, he knows his Howard. He knows his Howard better than anyone has done, well, since music, actually. And he's just able to continue that, so he's one good thing that to come out of the Marvel run. And also, Rob De La Torre, he also came out of the Marvel run. So the best things from it is what now gave us this. So to me, it's kind of like the stopgap along the way.
Should mention, in connection with that, if anyone's interested, you mentioned Chuck Dixon. He just did a new Conan novel.
We did. We had him here to speak about it.
Yeah, great stuff. Same publisher, actually, as my two books, The Long Moonlight and Death Mask. So really, I love Chuck Dixon. Great writer, understands Conan top to bottom. Highly recommend you check it out.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we do have, we share a lot of love for Conan here. We also share a lot of love for other comic book properties. One specifically that we all do in one way or another is Daredevil. And I know before the show's over and we get to the rest of the super chats here, you guys specifically wanted to discuss this. The rumor that Daredevil Born Again will uphold Netflix canon, although that kind of goes against what we've been hearing before, right, Andre? We were hearing we were going to get 25% different version of the last season redo, wasn't it supposed to be?
Yeah, originally, because here's like the thing: what Netflix did, Netflix owns, and they could reassign the cast and everything like that, but it would have to be the notorious 25% difference. But then, for some reason, Marvel, they went and they actually bought the entire backlog. They bought the entire Netflix series. It's theirs now. It's no longer on Netflix. It's on
and it needs to be
Disney
noted
Plus.
that this was actually done during Chapek's era. Remember,
Yes,
it
it
was
was
right
Chapek
after
that did
Spider-Man
that.
No Way Home, and I still maintain the reason for that is I didn't think they realized until after that fact how popular he was, because the moment Spider-Man No Way Home came out and people learned that he was in the film, the Netflix show jumped to the top like 5 or it went to like number 1 for a while on the Netflix chart, and at that point they went and bought him. So there you go. Sorry, go ahead, Andre.
Yeah. No, exactly as Tom said. Then they went and they actually bought the old series, and when they did that, they no longer have to be 25% different because it's theirs now. They now can make 100% canonical.
They could have just picked up with season 4 if they wanted.
Yeah, if they want to, they can do that now. But instead, they are doing this new Daredevil Born Again, which will retread some of the same ground that's covered in earlier stories. At least that's what we have been told. But now we have this rumor coming from CBR, or at least it's not coming from them, but they are the ones reporting it, that Daredevil Born Again will uphold the Netflix canon. So for all intents and purposes, if that is true, it should be season 4, although this is in conflict with what we have heard before, and certainly not all the cast are coming back. The ones who are coming back is like Charlie Cox, and it's John Bernthal's Punisher, but beyond that, it's a little bit more mixed, if you
Vincent
will.
D'Onofrio, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio, they have yet to confirm Foggy. Karen, they have explicitly said is not in the show, and Vanessa Fisk,
has been recast.
Kingpin's paramour, has been recast for some bizarre reason, and of course no word of Elektra, although canonically she wouldn't necessarily be in the picture. So just bizarre, and you pair this with the statements of Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, who have both separately confirmed this is a very different show. I think, what was the exact verbiage that Charlie Cox used? We're going to see the lighter side of Daredevil. And Vincent D'Onofrio said, this is not Netflix Daredevil, this is Disney's Daredevil. So it's not going to be exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
And so this seems to be in conflict. I have a feeling perhaps this is a bit of marketing fluff after when Vincent D'Onofrio made those statements, and then some of the photos of Charlie Cox on set came out. There was a little bit of blowback from Daredevil fans who are very dedicated. There was
Don't
a
forget
save
She-Hulk.
Yes, and She-Hulk too. In the immediate aftermath of both of those things, there's a bit of blowback, and I'm wondering if this isn't just a bit of planted damage control to say, oh, well, we own it now, so it technically could be part of the same continuity, even though, and this is really the main thing, the cast could all change. It's the creative team that made the show work, right? It was a Drew Goddard production. The primary writers on the show were Christos Gage and his wife, comic writer, who did Manhunter and a few other things. Also did a really good Daredevil graphic novel called Daredevil Redemption. That was really the heart and soul, the beating heart of the Daredevil program on Netflix. None of those people are coming back. Absolutely none of those people. They got some people who worked on She-Hulk and some people who wrote some police procedurals and even sitcoms to come in, and that's the writing team on this show. Those are the showrunners. The two showrunners are literally police procedural guys. So I'll give it the old one episode try, but I I'm not awash with optimism on this. And you guys know, anyone who watches my channel, I have multiple videos about Daredevil. I have an almost complete collection of Daredevil. I'm virtually obsessed. He's my favorite comic character, but I am not optimistic.
Yeah, Andre, I mean, I don't really have much to say on it. I mean, I love Daredevil, but I'm not as much of a fan as you two are. I'm more tangentially a fan, mainly just because of Ninja Turtles.
I basically echo Razorfist's thoughts here. My worry is the creative team and it's the writers, who are a bunch of, as you mentioned, Razorfist, they're a bunch of well, I don't want to insult them by saying nobodies, but there are people that come from backgrounds that you don't associate with the kind of high quality entertainment that the earlier seasons were. And they would really have to up their game compared to what they have been done before to get up to the level of what Daredevil used to be at its best. Will they be able to do that? We don't know. They could surprise us. But based on everything else that has come out of Marvel on Disney Plus, I'd be shocked, I tell you, if this was anything even close to it. And I even heard like rumors that the Punisher is going to be like angry with cops that use his logo and stuff like that, which seems kind of like a betrayal of what was before. So
that's been a big bugaboo with Disney of late. They have a real problem with Punisher because they construe that it's been co-opted by domestic terrorists and blah blah blah, right? They have this whole thing. So if Punisher's involved in this at all, that's a huge red flag.
Well, he probably is. And we know what John Bernthal said before, that he was only going to do it if they do it right, which means that either it is being done right, we just don't see how yet, or he sold out. I hope that it's being done right, we just don't know it. We can hope.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not like his cup has been running over with work of late, so I don't know. I wouldn't blame him. The thing that I am glad for, it's a shame. I'm a little bit torn at the same time. Worried about the creative team. Happy for Charlie Cox. I don't know how many people are aware, beyond the fact that Charlie Cox is a really cool dude. If you've ever met him at a convention or whatever, he's an incredibly humble and nice guy. Daredevil, the show on Netflix, was a family business for him. When that show was canceled in such ignominious fashion, he and his wife lost a job because his wife was, I forget, makeup artist, hair artist, something, maybe wardrobe, something. She worked behind the scenes on the show. So overnight, the both of them had no income, which is ridiculous, especially for such a gifted actor and whatever. Just ridiculous. So I'm glad that they have a gig. I hope his wife is smart enough not to take a job on a Disney Plus show. But I'm glad to see at least that he scored another gig, even if I'm not wild about some of the early stuff we're hearing about it.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I was impressed with him the moment I first saw him in Stardust, which is a really cool movie as well. So like, he was spot on casting. So yeah, I hope for the best. I want it to be good. I really want it to be good.
Plus, you're getting a full season's worth of shows. I mean, it's going to be the rare streaming show that actually gets 18 episodes.
Really? That's interesting, because what was one of the most common complaints about the Marvel Netflix shows? They were too padded out. They had too many episodes. This should well, like, okay, Luke Cage was like 3 episodes of a good show. And everything else was just, what in the world? Why is this still here?
I have to say, like, Luke Cage was okay, but that ending fight is the most stupid and like poorly matched, least exciting fight I have ever seen. It's like in Commando, right? Where you where you have like Schwarzenegger versus a guy that we actually have had on the show before. I don't want to say anything bad about the actor, but the character, let's just say the character compared to Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's this like mildly obese guy that he obviously is going to fall apart like a toothpick compared to Schwarzenegger. We're somehow supposed to believe that the two are evenly matched.
Yeah,
And
this is one of the reasons.
It was even worse in Luke Cage, the series, because there you have Cage, who is this meta-human, and what's he fighting? An old dude with a rocket pack. Like, oh, so very exciting. Such stakes. So incredible.
I think Vernon Wells in Commando is probably one of the reasons why, from basically that point forward in Arnold's career, he always found a way to get Sven Ole Thorson. I apologize if I'm butchering that pronunciation.
No, that was pretty good. That was pretty good.
He always found a way to get him cast in a villain role because that guy's huge, and you could believe that he could go toe to toe with Arnold.
Yeah. No, he's bigger than Arnold. Like, Arnold has like more musculature, but in terms of like just pure bulk and body mass, height, and everything, Sven Ole Thorsen was bigger than Schwarzenegger.
Huge dude.
Yeah, so big that he was like in every single Conan and Red Sonja movie, different roles, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And with that, let's run through a few more of these super chats here. And we have a number for you, so let's begin with those. I'm just going to go up to the top here and start looking for them. Yeah, here we go. JWT6577 says, Razorfist up this early, you can't fool me, Styx Hexenhammer.
You caught me, clank.
Yeah. Where's your kitty? And Mr. Blurred Out says for $5, Razor, as Cato would say, Hollywood delenda est. And then we have the Dark Eagle 1917, who says, at Fist, Hell on Wheels was awesome. After watching the series, I always thought Anson Mount was the perfect actor to play Joel in the Last of Us adaptation.
He carried that show to a large degree. He was really good on that show. That show, do you know the story of like Hell on Wheels, how badly AMC tried to kill that show and it just backfired on him?
But no, do share.
So it was, I don't know what the deal was. It wasn't, Hell on Wheels was like one of the only shows on AMC that they didn't make themselves. It was like a joint thing. I think some Canadian companies were in on it, some American companies. It was like a joint thing, and it just happened to air on AMC. So they didn't have as much of an incentive to advertise it because they didn't make as much money on it as the other shows. So the whole time, all they ever talked about was Walking Dead and Breaking Bad. And I mean, if you're a fan of those shows, that's great. But Hell on Wheels was really, really good and deserved to be promoted too. So anyways, they get to the end of the second season or whatever. They try and kill it, right? They have a bunch of edicts to try. Oh, you got to change this. You got to fire this actor. You got to whatever. The showrunners wind up walking. So at the beginning of the third season, AMC are like, okay, here's our chance. We're going to kill this show. So they change it from, I think it was originally on Friday nights or something. It had a decent time slot. They move it to Saturday nights and they push it back even later. It's like 10 o'clock or something, like just the death spot for a primetime drama. And it gains viewers. It winds up having more viewers than like 3 of the new AMC shows. And so basically it forced AMC to cancel the new shows they had. The shows that had taken over Hell on Wheels' old spot, and then replace those canceled shows with Hell on Wheels, which they then had to greenlight for 2 more seasons. They tried their damnedest to cancel Hell on Wheels or to have an excuse to cancel it, but it kept gaining viewers. Very underrated show.
Well, thanks for the history lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Much appreciated. And then moving on from there, the next super chat is from, I believe, Luca Rocks, who says for $10, Razor, did you do a general Shadow retrospective?
Yeah.
I can't find it on your channel anymore. Also, Metro has great Shadow figure available for pre-order. Their Conan was great.
I'm still waiting. Apparently, my Solomon Kane Mezco figure is coming in August. So I'm still waiting on that. They did a Solomon Kane recently that was beautiful. Yes, I did do 2 Shadow retrospectives. They are called Enter the Shadow and Deeper into the Shadow. It's part 1 and part 2. But yeah, they're still on there. They're hard to find because of probably copyright claims. And generally, when you get copyright claims on videos, even if the videos are still visible, it buries them. It doesn't send them to subscribers' feeds. No one knows about it, yada, yada. So I think that's what happened there.
Mm. Then we got Bishop Cruz who says, Fist, you need to show more love to Peckinpah. Ride of the Country and Wild Bunch are 2 of the best Westerns ever made. People need to see them.
Indeed. Yeah, Sam Peckinpah, actually, I recommended Have Gun Will Travel, which I love that show. Sam Peckinpah directed some episodes of that show, actually, I found out recently. I didn't know that.
Interesting. Then we got Rob Biller here who says, Razorfist, thank you for offering hardcover monochrome edition of Ghosts of the Badlands. This looks like it's going to be epic.
Yeah, thank you. The original plan of the comic was to make it monochrome because George, the artist, comes from a manga background, and I come from more of a Euro comics kind of fan base sort of idea. And a lot of those comics are done on both sides are done in black and white, which I'm a big fan of. So yeah, we have unlocked now, because we're almost quadruple our original goal. We have already unlocked a color version of the hardcover. And so it was suggested to us we should also have a monochrome version too. And I agree.
Fear Sundown says, I think it means in honor of Razorfist comic, IDW just imploded. DC Marvel Comics started the woke in media virus, but survived as R&D. Is the time up for Marvel and DC finally?
I don't know if you guys feel this. I know they've already threatened this a few times. You guys have covered some of these stories, some of the rumors that Warner and Disney and whatever, there have been little talks and suggestions here and there. Oh, we might pare down the print side of the comic business, and maybe these are a little more valuable as IP farms, basically. I think that's the ultimate goal here. I think eventually we will wind up at a point where Marvel and DC Comics might still publish, a small handful of comics, but for the most part, they're just going to be an IP piggy bank for movies and games and stuff that they're other things they're going to make. Phone games, most likely.
Yeah, you're probably right. ActionCom says, in Razorfist, in terms of destructive cultural issues, which would you prefer how it ended? It ran its course, or it was stopped in its tracks? Ugh.
Destructive cultural issues. I mean, it depends. Sometimes if you just stop something dead in its tracks, it winds up martyring itself. If it's a destructive movement or something, I assume you're talking about, like a social movement or something. You can wind up kind of martyring it in the process, and then it winds up coming back 10 times stronger. You still look at the myth making around the McCarthy stuff. I mean, Joseph McCarthy wasn't even involved in the House Un-American Activities Committee hearings, but the propaganda in public school is that he was. And so the power of that myth has unfortunately created a lot of millennial and Zoomer socialists and created kind of the democratic socialist movement and stuff. So, yeah, you kind of have to worry about that.
All right, and we got Mecha J here who says, definitely should check out Razor's Hollywood Was Always Red video. It's really informative.
Yeah, that's the video I referenced earlier.
All right. Then ActionCom says, Razorfist, Tom has been assisting in a Death Wish retrospective. Any advice? By the way, Denzel said the mugger wasn't him.
Yeah, Denzel, I caught that after. Man, I made that Death Wish video a long time ago. But apparently Denzel says it wasn't him. Boy, it looks like him, though. It does. In Death Wish 1, for those who don't know, there's a mugger, one of the first muggers that Bronson shoots. There's like 3 of them. And one of the dudes looks exactly like Denzel Washington. And the rumor's been around for years that it was him. But apparently it wasn't, according to him.
Yeah, we actually discussed that last week on our part 1 in the retrospectives, and then this next week here we're doing part 2. So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. You almost had me convinced that it's the better of the films.
So it's a good movie. I like it a
watch
lot.
It again.
Yeah.
So that is all of Razorfist's super chats. Before you go, because I'm assuming that's what's going on here, because I did have to step away for a moment. You have a campaign going on right now for Ghosts of the Badlands. Did you want us to show this trailer here real quick for you?
Oh yeah, sure. If you can, it's a very very brief trailer. If you want to watch it,
sure.
It's pretty cool.
Awesome. So do check that out if you haven't already. I know I'm gonna have to here. So thank you so much for being here today, Razor, and we
I was
appreciate
happy to
the conversation, and of course taking your time to talk to us about all this goings on in Hollywood, and hopefully we'll have you back again soon.
Right on. Yeah, it was a blast, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. It was a blast to have you here as always, and check out his comic. Link is in the description. And with that, we have more super chats to go through.
Tipping Barn says Minnesota can have Whitmer, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Elizabeth Young has been a member for 2 months and says, in fact, there's an infographic that shows all the entities that Disney owns, controls, and Reedy Creek is on there. Yes. This going back to the Reedy Creek business from earlier. Then we got Wolven Weaver here, who says, while I do think some games are too cinematic to be films, I think the issues with game movies in the past has been that they have been very off-brand. In some cases, yes. I can see what you're saying here. Yep. Wolven Weaver says, too cinematic or too long. Some games are huge. That's the other problem, is you already get a lot more you can do in a game than you can in a movie as far as time. Brandon the Anime Guy says, Blackie Lawless is best known frontman ever. God fucking speed. Well, sorry we missed that while Razorfist was still here. Waltman says, C11 and ban TikTok bill works in tandem. Yeah, I haven't. I know about the TikTok bill. I don't know about C11. So I don't know if Andre has anything to say about that, but
I haven't studied it in detail, but there seems to be like some very troubling implications.
Yeah,
very troubling.
Elf says, did you hear that they are adapting 2 movies based on the book Wicked? Well, they've been trying to for years to do Wicked. Well, I think one's based on the book and one's based on the musical, if I'm not mistaken. I think you're right. But they've been trying to do that for the longest time, and it just never has gotten off the ground. So we'll see if they can actually do it this time. Last Millennial says, what do you think is making Guardians of the Galaxy 3 not good to many? I haven't heard anybody really bashing on it yet. The early reviews coming out are good so far, but as far as like lack of interest, if that's what you mean, Last Millennial, I can definitely say that there's a little lack of interest in that respect. Yeah.
The only thing that I seem to be getting from those that have seen it, if there's like a recurring thing other than talking points, is that the ending is somber and not too uplifting. And in many ways, I think it feels kind of like a real ending for the MCU, as this pop cultural juggernaut, because without the Guardians, what the hell do you have left?
Yeah, 6 says it's getting an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, so that's not too bad.
Oh, it's going well, yeah, but it was 93, something like that, so it's going down already.
Huh. Well, we'll see. Tennille says fun is problematic. Yes, it can be. Big Red 40K says people forget that once upon a time in the West, financially disappointed in North America, but made big money in Europe. It's been this way for decades, if not longer. Well, yeah, there's different markets as well. That's the thing. So we'll see how it works out in the U.S. if they pick up the Western going forward, or if it's going to be more of a video game thing. Marks of 117B says, I think Europe likes Westerns so much because they never had their own Western phase. Their closest would be the medieval era, but far from similar. That's true too. I see what you're saying there. And we got Doug 1985 who says Near Dark 1987 is technically a Western, but with vampires. I love that movie more than Lost Boys. So you're one of the rare people who likes that one better. There's a bit of a debate about that, but usually Lost Boys wins. Dale Grimes sends in 10 and says, read Jonathan Majors. The restraining order is standard. The DA always pushes for it, regardless what the victim says. Yeah. Then we did cover that. Gerald Campos says, as far as Westerns, did you all include Firefly? Oh, I'm sure many people do. It's definitely a space Western or whatever you want to talk about it. Now 6 says it's down to 81% Andre for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, then it's dropping even more. So then basically we've gone from 93 to 88 to 81 over the course of today. You know what that tells me? This movie is going to be close to rotten by the end.
Uh-oh.
When it's dropping this fast already, it's not a good sign.
Jay Grove says dumped the Depp Heard story. Yeah. Almost still afraid to say their names anymore. Mecha J has been a member for 5 months and says the new Transformer movie will not have voiceover artist Peter Cullen reprising his iconic role as Optimus Prime. Chris Hemsworth is taking over. Why the change? Because they're morons. Peter Cullen was almost barely a part of the original film if it wasn't for certain people saying something. Yeah. I don't know what to say other than this is typical of them. I mean, I know Peter Cullen's getting up there in age, but I know he loves playing Optimus Prime, so I don't get it. It's dumb. Andre has nothing to say about it, so
there is no Optimus Prime but Peter Cullen. And you can say what you want about producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. Lord knows that I have, but he was one of those actually pushing for Peter Cullen to be the voice of Optimus Prime in the first movie, when other producers, and I believe even Michael Bay himself, wanted an A-list actor to do it instead. I believe George Clooney was their pick. But Lorenzo de Bonaventura fought for Peter Cullen, and he won in the end. Why on earth they would go with a Hemsworth of all people as Optimus Prime, Lord only knows.
'Cause he's Thor, that's why.
Has to be.
Clearly, that's why. It goes to what I was saying before about the whole Mario Brothers thing and why do they really need movie stars to do these roles outside of Jack Black? None of these made any sense. It all started back with Pixar and Shrek, and it's been an ongoing thing for years. The funniest one, of course, was the Chipmunks. It's like, why does it matter? You can't even tell who the voices are, but whatever. Yeah, it's just so they have a name to put on the posters. But yeah, for those who don't know what he's talking about is they announced an animated Transformers movie called Transformers 1. So I'm assuming that's the one that Chris Hemsworth will be doing the voice of Optimus Prime. Horseradish Power says Pyramid Head is an aspect of Valtiel, the red god. Well, there you go. Little history lesson. Jesus Davila sends us a thumbs up for $10. Thank you so much, Jesus. If you haven't hit that thumbs up yet, be like Jesus and hit that thumbs up. Metallica fan 1442 says, unpopular opinion, but I like the Warcraft movie as a fan of the games. Quite complex lore to fit into a 2-hour film. Yeah, that's one that always gets overlooked when we talk about video game
I
movies.
kind of liked that movie too. It just looked way too clean.
That's the one David Bowie's kid directed, right?
Yes, that's the one
That's what
David
I thought,
Bowie's
yeah.
kid directed. The one who has like a different name to try to conceal the fact that he's David Bowie's kid.
Yeah, well, hey, he made it on
That
his own
movie did
accord, I
kind of
guess.
ruin his career, though.
Yeah. I watched The Man Who Fell to Earth. I do not get it. Like, I mean, I know what's going on in the movie, but it's just like, how much acid did somebody do before they decided to make this movie? Tommy Reviews says, Tom, check your email. I sent you the Martin soundtrack. Enjoy. Oh, thank you. Awesome. So we don't have to do the whole mail business. That's cool. Thank you so much. Doug 1985 says, imagine inspections on rides and on the park itself. They are done. Oh, that'll be interesting, especially after the fire that just happened. I'm sure a lot of those rides and stuff are not up to spec. Did you hear about that, Andre? The Fantasia Dragon burnt down.
Yeah, I did see that. I saw the clip, of course, but I'm not familiar with the ride or anything else. But if that is a result of Disney's self-governing powers, then maybe they need some governance, because I don't think it's appropriate, like that big dragons actually take fire and burn all the way to the ground. I mean, that's...
Well, it
Yeah.
is funny because the first time I ever remember hearing about this special district business was during a documentary I was watching about accidents at parks and stuff. And one of the reasons why they say you never hear about any of the accidents at Disney World, because it wasn't, I don't think, the main documentary, but it was one about the one park in New Jersey where everybody kept getting hurt at. I can't remember the name of it.
Action Park.
Action Park, thank you. And they were talking about how one of their arguments is that just as many people or more probably get hurt and killed at Disney World each year, but they don't report it because of the special district, because they control everything. So
they can
that's
just
the first
pay
time
people
I
off
remember
to
hearing
shut
about
up and carry on.
And they don't actually have to report it to the news and all that shit. It's like the way it works. Like, since it doesn't go through typical channels or whatever, the news doesn't get their hands on it the way they normally would.
Yeah. And if I could go back in time to the 80s, early 90s, one of the things I would do is go to Action Park. Not the only thing I would do, but it's one of them.
It definitely seems like it was a hell of a place.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah. There's a couple documentaries about that place I do recommend. Can you grab this one real quick, Andre?
Yeah, certainly. Then for $20, thank you so much. John Orchard writes, I'm not giving up hope, but we need to stop consuming Disney products until they turn around. As long as we give them money, they will keep doing what they are doing. This is an abusive relationship. Yes, I agree 100%. That is indeed right. As long as you keep rewarding a certain behavior, you're going to get more of that behavior. And it's really as simple as that. And this is true in the economy as well as everything else. And then Emperor Creatine says, for $2, you will pay the price for your lack of gains. This is always the case.
Yeah. Then Commander Ed Straker of Shadow says, the Zamboni machine was invented by Californian Frank Zamboni. He was connected with the Ice Capades. Oh, he's connected with the Ice Capades shows. Still made Paramount. CA was he California or was he there?
Still made.
Hauser was as a bit.
Paramount California. Huel Hauser has a video. Okay, we'll have to check out Huel Hauser for more details on that. So thank you.
Jesus Davila gifted 1 membership. Thank you so much, Jesus. And then Paulus Plain says the closest European to Western is the Russian Empire Eastern expansion, aka the European Eastern. That made no sense to me, but I'm sure it makes more sense to you.
The closest European to Western is the Russian Empire Eastern expansion, aka the European Eastern. Yeah, that's probably
okay, like the time of a Great West, or like the Old West for them. Gotcha.
Yeah. Perilous knows his history. So yeah, this is true. The closest thing to the Western period, yeah, that would be it. Perilous knows his stuff. So thank you, Perilous.
Indeed, and with that, we are caught up for the day.
All right. Well, with that, I would like to say thank you to our esteemed guests of today, WDW Pro, Razorfist, and of course Paul Chato. Links for all of them are in the description, so make sure to check them out, and also check out our Razorfist project, and make sure to check out our recent videos on Cleopatra. That one does seem to be a little bit suppressed by the algorithm, and that same may be true about our Conan video. So do check both of those out. I see that Bounding into Comics has a great write-up of the Conan video already. Yeah, that's the upcoming Conan comic. I think is going to be special. So check it out, and make sure to get your copy of issue 0 on Free Comic Book Day, now in just a few days here.
Indeed, and with that, we are wrapped up, so it is time for
some koalas in the rain.
Fuzzy buggers in the rain.
Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koalas in the rain, koalas in the rain, no fucks given. Koalas in the rain.